I've been up since 6. That's late for me.
That's why I asked, because I know you were going to be up early.
Usually I'm up before, not on a Saturday. Like all the paperwork is way over there.
I do that for fun sometimes. I just run it up, down, switch them.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
That made a lot more sense.
All right. Good morning, everyone. We'll call the City Council special meeting to order. It's Saturday, October 4th, 2025. It's 9:50 a.m. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Baker?
Here.
Councilmember Curley?
Here.
Councilmember DeMonico?
Here.
Mayor Kleinfeld?
Here.
Councilmember Shadlick?
Here.
All right, and we'll move right into a closed session. Could somebody make a motion?
So move.
All right.
Yep, I'll second that.
All right, motion to go into closed session pursuant to 152681F. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember DeMonico?
Yes.
Councilmember Curley?
Yes.
Mayor Kleinfeld?
Yes.
Councilmember Shadlick?
Yes.
Okay, going into closed session at 9:51. All right, reconvening. It's 10:01 right now, and I guess I'll just turn it over to you, Mr. Vitrano, to start us.
Thank you very much, Mayor, council members. I appreciate your attendance this morning and your engagement. Oh, sorry. I got it now. I am now on the mic. I appreciate your attendance this morning and your dedication to spend a Saturday in one of the most important decisions that this council will make, hopefully for many, many years. Hiring your next city manager, or at least at this point, interviewing your next city manager, is an important role that this council plays to appoint the top administrator for your community. And I know you take it very seriously. I thank you for your just support throughout this process, the support of the city department heads yesterday. I'll just give you a little bit of background on the search. Council knows this. This is more for the public. We did an extensive search. We brought in candidates from all over. I pre-screened several, and then we had a meeting with City Council to select the finalists. That are these 4 that will be interviewed today. Yesterday, the 4 candidates had an opportunity to sit down with the department heads for about 50 minutes each in a roundtable discussion, and council members have been provided that feedback from that session. I'll review that in a moment. This morning, we'll have about 45 to 50 minutes to interview each candidate. Each candidate's been requested to provide about a 5 to 8 minute opening presentation or opening statement, and our candidates are prepared to do that. So the PowerPoints are ready. As the candidates come in, I will have them set up for them. The first question they'll be asked is to provide that PowerPoint. From there, we'll ask the questions, and we'll go over that in 1 second. I just want to point to the papers, the materials out in front of you, and I know there's temptation to push them around as you had other stuff to go in front of you, but I'll go through them in order that they're placed. On top, you should have a packet that's called Interviews, and that is all the candidate information that you can refer to as they go through their interview. The second, you should have 4 copies of the questions and notes page. The top should say draft 09/28/25. That's 1 packet of questions for each candidate. I'll draw your attention to the very last page of each packet, which has kind of the rules of engagement for an interview such as this. We'll go back to that in a moment. The next packet is candidate presentations. This is a copy of all the presentations that they're going to be providing at the beginning of their interview. So while they're on the PowerPoint presentation for the public to be able to view, if you want to follow along and take notes in your packet, that's the next set there. Finally, the last smaller 4-page packet that you have, this is the director feedback from yesterday. Directors were asked to give pros and cons for each candidate, and that is what's been provided to you verbatim in that packet. The verbatim feedback is provided without name, but I appreciate the time and the energy that the directors put into yesterday to get to know the candidates a little bit, and I'm certain that you will take time to review that director feedback. As a reminder of the schedule, you will have the interviews today. We will close this meeting after public comment without discussing the candidates today. You will take the 4 hours of information today and the director feedback and the resumes, and if we get public feedback, which is available with the QR code for the public to provide more feedback, and the ability to watch the interviews again if you desire between now and Tuesday. And then you will return for your regular council meeting on Tuesday. I'll be at that meeting and will facilitate the discussion of candidates and the potential selection of a preferred candidate. So that will occur on Tuesday, not at the end of the interviews today. 4 hours is an extremely long time to be behind that dais and then be asked to make a really important decision. And that will give you an opportunity to digest the feedback received from directors, as well as rewatch the interviews, because sometimes it's hard to both engage with the questions up there and hear the candidate interviews, or if you want to go back and review. Let's talk for a moment, if you don't mind going to the question sheet, which is the one at the very top. It's marked draft 09/28/25. If you go to that, you'll have 4 of those. The suggested process for this would be, I'm going to ask the first question, which is the question that they've been preparing for. And then we go through questions 2 through 10, And if council members are willing, I'd ask for each of you to ask a question, kind of go down the line and then come do it twice. And if you're okay with that, we can assign those questions now so that you ask the consistent question to each candidate. Can I get?
So
Yes.
that was part of our discussion that we had because we hadn't discussed the format before. So we have a plan. I'll just be going down the line and back, and then I think I added one question so that we all have two.
Perfect.
So,
and I'll take the first question as long as that doesn't mess up your plan. That is perfect. Thank you, Mayor. And then at the end, I will close it out with just an opportunity for the candidates to provide a closing statement. Depending on the length of the interview, and I'll let the candidates know this, they may or may not have an opportunity to ask you questions. They had an opportunity to ask questions of directors. They had a tour of City Hall, so they've had an opportunity to kind of get to know the city a little bit. In this format, it's just really hard to kind of have a question and answer exchange. But if there is time at the end, I might ask the candidates to engage in a question. You are welcome to follow up to questions for clarification if you have any, or a follow-up question at the end. Just please be recognized by the mayor before you ask that of the candidates, and keep in mind that we are going to stick very close to 50 minutes. I won't really interject after this first question and the introduction until the end, and that's going to be your indication that we're coming close to time. You do not have to keep time. I will keep time. I'm very particular on making sure candidates have about the same amount of time with the council, even if they don't get to a last question. The time is more important with exposure to city council than getting each and every question. But I think with the cadence that I expect, you will get through all the questions. Any questions for me before we begin with our first candidate?
I don't think so. No. Go ahead.
All right, thank you.
Do you want me to get him?
For Rich. Thanks.
Screen's going nuts.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're okay.
That's okay. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Brian, for joining us this morning. Thank you first and foremost for your application and interest in the position. Thank you for your diligent efforts throughout to be prepared for yesterday's and today's interview process. You know the first question that's coming your way. We've asked you to prepare a presentation to provide a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your vision for Eastpointe. We've asked you to contain this to approximately 8 minutes or less so that we can get into the regular interview questions. Once you conclude, it'll go back to the mayor, and the mayor will facilitate the rest of the interview. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Mayor and Council. My name is Brian Wood, as you can tell, and I just wanted to share a little bit about me. Before we jump in, I have a few pictures that will be on the next slide, but as I think all of you know, and hopefully don't hold it against me, I am born and raised a suburb outside of Cleveland, Ohio, and so that therein lies my the state of Maryland, but am extremely excited about the opportunity to return home to the Midwest and to a great community and city such as Eastpointe. So a little bit about who I am. Looking at it from...
Can you pull your mic just a little bit closer? Sorry to interrupt you.
Sorry, yeah. Absolutely. Sorry.
Thank you.
Certainly. So I thought in the old adage, a picture is worth 1,000 words. So I just wanted to share with everyone here and with the community a little bit about who I am and how I came to think about the role of city manager. If you look in the middle, there is a picture of a ton of people walking down the street. And that was my first day on the job working for the mayor of the District of Columbia. She believed deeply in community engagement, and we would often do what were considered community or ward walks with directors and the police department, and my role as the community relations and services liaison was to walk, and we engaged and looked at everything from overgrown bushes to potholes to down power lines to vacant buildings. And it really was there where I realized the importance of walking community, of being a part of a community. Being a city manager is a lot more than looking at spreadsheets. It's a lot more than collective bargaining agreements. It's a lot more than I think some of the technical aspects. And so that was a really foundational piece for me. If you look to the right, that continued, and you'll see that in all of these slides. Did a community cleanup in a little, in our recreation park, but it was right next to a pond where we used to do derby fishing, or did do derby fishing. And so really becoming a part of the community, understanding the nuances, the history is extremely important. Part of that, creating quality of life, is also about safety and being able to provide the services that our residents need. And that means working with stakeholders at every level, from federal government on down. And so I was giving a tour to Senator Collins with the police chief and fire chief, and we were able to secure federal funding for a joint public safety facility. And it was the largest single bond that the city had ever put out. And they actually are planning on breaking ground next year on that facility. And in the upper corner is where I am currently. We did a Glenarden Day. It was a day full of rides for kids, full of funnel cake, full of bands playing, and that is really an instrumental part. Auburn, so we had a public beach that we turned that was used for swimming, but turned it into a huge draw for residents by putting out Adirondack chairs. We redid a playground that was there, made it ADA compliant with soft rubber grounding. We replaced the basketball courts, new gazebo, and really brought life back to a park that was definitely underutilized. Continuation of the importance of being and seeing things from the eyes of our residents. We had a joint venture on public transportation in Auburn, Maine, with Lewiston, but we were really trying to figure out how successful are these buses, the transit, are they going where they need to go? What are the headways for people that are using these modes of transportation? And we dug into the stats, and that was great. And then we realized, let's go out. I had all our directors. We walked to different locations, got on the bus, and we wanted to see from an actual experiential standpoint what it took to get from the community college to the Walmart or the Target, from the Target down to City Hall. And it was eye-opening because we revamped a number of the routes because it was actually quicker for us to walk the 2 miles from the community college down to City Hall than it was to wait on the bus, which really showed some deficiencies and challenges. But you don't know that until you're out there experiencing it. Had the opportunity to work for to work in the Emergency Operations Center during the presidential inauguration in 2017. And then the one in the middle was, we were there, I was in Maine for the Lewiston shooting, where we lost 18 individuals. And that was a week after that incident. We had a 2-sheet ice facility and AAA team played out of there. And I'd never seen the community come together in such a way. It was amazing, it was breathtaking. One of our counselors lost his son in that shooting. And it's something that will stick with me forever. I just remember opening up the middle school and doing reunifications. And it's one of the hardest moments, but the resiliency on the other side was amazing. I think I couldn't have articulated what I would have ever wanted to do, but my former boss and city manager of Auburn did that when he nominated me for 40 Under 40, which I received, and so you can read that there. So why Eastpointe? As I've said before, it's a vibrant community. It is a community with so much opportunity and steeped history. It's a community that doesn't rest with things being good enough or the way they've always been done, always looking forward, always looking to improve, and if the name doesn't say it alone, not afraid to change. And those are things that are paramount, I think, for a community and for a manager to understand that those are going to be driving forces, both from the community, but also working with a council that has those expectations as well. And I think we've seen so much of that come to life, and just looking and reading through the 2019 master plan. I know we're going and revising that currently, but so many of those projects are already underway, and that's fantastic. Why I'm excited to work here, obviously the 2040 master plan is huge. For me, that is something that is a living document. It is a guidepost. It is something that clearly has tremendous amounts of community engagement involved in it, and so a great piece to work towards. Missing middle, we talk about the opportunity to grow and expand and change. The missing middle is huge. It's something that I worked on significantly with the city of Auburn, and was actually written up with Strong Towns and George Mason University, some zoning and legislation that was passed at the state level. And let me be crystal clear, the mayor at the time was a tremendous force in spearheading that, but having the opportunity to partner and work with him was fantastic. Providing employee stability and support is critical to any organization moving forward. And most importantly, resident engagement, support, and predictability. Providing all of those things is absolutely key, and things that I'm excited to work on as the city manager. So thank you for your time and consideration, and I look forward to your questions.
So I'll just kick it over to Councilman DeMonico first. Would you like to start us off?
All right. Thanks for the presentation, Mr. Wood.
Absolutely.
In your view, what makes a city like Eastpointe successful, and how would you ensure Eastpointe achieves or maintains that standard?
I think there are 3 pivotal pieces to maintaining success. I think the first is the residents, obviously, the community. There's expectations, there's desires that have been set and articulated, and I think are embodied by the council, which is the second piece. A strong and visionary council that understands where they want to go and is willing to support new and innovative ways to get there. And most important, and last, but equally as important is staff. And I had the opportunity to meet a number of the firefighters and hearing them talk about what their vision is, how they are both excited and desire to, I think as they articulated, not tread water. I'm sure you've probably heard that before, but that's something to me, I've had the opportunity to experience in other communities, and I think that's vitally important. If that's the zeitgeist, the ether here, then there's no limit to how far the community can go. I think it's paramount to be creative. I think Eastpointe is very similar to other communities and facing challenges with infrastructure, with funding, changing headwinds at the state level and federal level. So how we continue to move the community forward while acknowledging the realities of those changing facets is going to be key. But it can be done. But it is important to be creative about it, whether that's public-private partnerships, whether that's thinking creatively. And I know Eastpointe's already doing this, and something that is very exciting to see as a city manager is the collaboration regionally. I think you can look at the Kelly Street, Complete Street project as an example. I think you can look at S'mores as an example. So it's going to be critical, I think, moving forward in the future to look at and find opportunities to partner with our neighboring jurisdictions as well when it works and when it meets the desire of all parties.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Vishadlik.
How would you describe your management and leadership style? It's a two-part. Please identify both strengths and weaknesses related to your management and leadership approach.
Sure. So my mom was a trainer growing up. She owned her own business. And along with playing on her flip charts, I absorbed a few other things along the way. And one thing she often spoke about, and really was something that has stuck with me, is you need to be the leader that the team needs at the moment. And so my leadership style, my natural leadership style is one of consensus building. I believe heavily in engaging and bringing people together. I think a city manager, while someone that needs to be well-versed in a number of things, is not going to be the subject matter expert on many things. And so having the right team around you, having the right resources around you, having the aptitude and wherewithal to go and find information that's needed, whether that's calling upon other city managers, whether that's looking at the Michigan Municipal Association. I think there's a number of resources out there. But for me, that's my natural leadership style, but that doesn't mean that there aren't times and instances or situations where you need to be more direct, you need to be more hands-on. There's not a lot of room for consensus building. I think a key example of that is emergency situations where we do have to make quick, decisive action. I know, and this is just a small example, but there was a major artery that dramatically impacts trucking in central Maine. But we had a river, Auburn is right against a river, that floods about every 20 years, and the city manager was gone, and we stood up the Emergency Operations Center because we anticipated that it was gonna flood, and it did, and it flooded so much that it began to creep into a major artery, and so around 1 a.m., the call had to be made, do we close down this major artery until the water starts to recede, or not? And we ended up closing it down. Fortunately, it was only for about 5 or 6 hours. But it was myself, the police chief, the fire chief, public works director, all up at 1 a.m., and going out there and looking, assessing, reaching out to our regional emergency management counterpart to figure out if that was the right call. But I didn't make it in a vacuum, but you also need to be able and willing to make that decision quickly, so.
Thank you. All right, Councilman Curley, would you like to?
Sure, thank you. What would you consider essential in the relationship between the city manager and the city council, and how will you facilitate a productive relationship with the city council?
I think the most important, I think there's one above all else, and I think that's trust. I think the ability for council to trust the city manager, for city manager to trust the council is absolutely foundational. And that's going to reach a multitude of levels. I think the ability for the city manager to share pertinent and timely information with council, to help council frame decisions, to understand where council wants to go and come up with creative ways to get there, bringing staff and the team along to understand what council's vision is instrumental, but all of that is predicated upon trust. If you don't have that, then no matter what information is provided, no matter how that dialogue goes, there's always an air of uncertainty, and I think that goes both ways, whether council is no longer confident in the information being provided by the city manager, but also staff. If they're not confident in the city manager and the way they're framing things or providing information to council, that can cause a lot of challenges. And so this role, amongst many things, is certainly that conduit between council and the team. And so making sure that the trust is there is crucial. But trust comes from significant engagement, significant conversations. It's not something that just pops up overnight because we really want it to. So.
Thank you. Councilman Baker.
Thank you. All right. How do you ensure that the needs and concerns of the community are incorporated into the city decision-making process?
Absolutely. Great question. I think first and foremost, being in the community, being open and accessible to residents, whether that's having walk-in meetings, whether that's coming across somebody in the grocery store, whether that's going and being a part of art shows and exhibits or other community events. That's where you really get the opportunity to engage with residents and hear, and businesses, and hear from them what some of the concerns and challenges are. Obviously, you're going to get significant insight from counselors. You guys are the body representing all 34,000 residents, 35,000 plus. So I think it's a mixture of both. And I think a city manager is always going to see some of these challenges or opportunities through a slightly different lens. But when there's overlap, when there's consistency between what council's hearing, what the city manager and staff are hearing, then there's also opportunity to come forward and think of solutions. I'm very solution-oriented. Doesn't mean that it's going to be the perfect solution for everybody, but does it move the ball forward? Does it address, I think, a substantial amount of the concern or the challenge is critical. And I think also, I think closing that gap is also relying on staff. You have 200 plus employees that are out there, eyes and ears every day, engaging with residents, engaging with businesses, whether that's through code, police, fire, recreation, economic development. So a good city manager is leaning on, engaging with, and then following up on things that staff are bringing to them as well.
A situation that you've had to handle where there was contentious, strong, diverging opinions, and what did you learn from that experience?
Yes, there have been a few. I think an example that I would use most recently with the city of Auburn. This city, while a population of about 25,000, is a very unique city in that it has a downtown core with probably half the population down there. It's much more commercial, it's much denser, but then the city itself is 65 square miles. And so there's a significant amount of rural parts of the city. And obviously, the two have very different needs and experiences. And so when we were looking at, in Auburn, the primary lake there is the primary drinking source for both the city of Auburn and Lewiston and surrounding communities, so about a region of about 80,000. We were looking at redesigning septic standards because a lot of the septic systems around the lake were beginning to fail. And there was great contention about the design standards, whether those were appropriate for the lake, and whether going in and replacing some of these septic standards, or some of these septics would be more harmful than good for the quality of the lake. And hovering in the background of that was if we lost our federal waiver, a filtration system of to the tune of about $40 million would have to be implemented. So there were certainly some high stakes there. But through continuous engagement, through bringing in experts from the University of Maine, from the EPA, we were able to design standards that were both better for the environment, more cost effective for those residents that did need to replace their septic standards, but also was responsive to those that were concerned about the lake as well. And so it was a process that took about 8 months to finalize the standards. But I would say, and I'm sure our planning department would say they weren't perfect, but they were a significant stride in the right direction, and really took into account, I think, a multitude of perspectives and concerns. And so that's something that we were pretty proud of.
Thank you. The city is very focused on building a positive employee culture among staff at all levels. Sorry about that. What is your experience with intentional building and maintaining a positive culture for an organization?
Yeah, great question. That is one of the most important things to do, and one of the things from day one that I would certainly begin trying to solidify. And I think the first thing to do as a city manager, at least my approach, is to come in and understand and to see. I think sometimes, especially in this role, people can get a little eager coming in thinking that they might know better or they understand. The community and the staff here have lived experiences that the city manager needs to understand. So talking and having dialogues with staff, I think, is the first place that you would want to go to understand why things are done a certain way, how they got to be a certain way, before you go in and say, well, I've seen it done this way over here, so that's the better way. Because each community is unique and different and special. But I think that goes back to what I spoke about in my presentation, which is getting the trust and helping staff understand that you are invested in them, that you are desiring to make sure that this is the best place that they can work and feel safe and heard as they're serving the residents. I always tell mentees, as a mentor told me, your job in this role, one of your key responsibilities is making sure and serving the staff, because they are then going to serve the residents, and the better you serve them, the more you understand their needs and concerns, the better off the team will be, and thus the better service delivery to the residents. And so that is crucial to me, and I think an example of making sure that employees understood that was when I was in Auburn, and something that I've also done in my current role in Maryland is change the performance evaluation plan, or performance evaluations. One thing I noticed is that in both of those scenarios, and I've seen this in a number of other places, is there's not a section to talk about what the employee wants in terms of growth, what they desire, what is their educational pursuits, outside of, their day-to-day to help them achieve those things. And so I think it's important that managers and directors understand that as well, that, you know, your team has desires and strengths, and it's a way to garner insight, but also support them. And we did a reorganization with the city of Auburn, and we actually found tremendous talent within the city that was actually located in other departments. In fact, and it's still a challenge today, finance directors are still a challenge to find. And we transitioned, at the time, who was an executive assistant, down to the finance department because she had a tremendous interest in finance, and over the course of 4 years, worked herself from finance clerk to deputy finance director, is currently the finance director, went on and got certifications from GFOA and a number of other places. But that was that long-term thinking and strategic growth from within mindset, but also we knew that that would eliminate the reality down the road of what ended up being a retirement, and being able to do so in a way that provided continuity and insight and stability for the city.
Councilman DeMonico?
All right. How have you successfully addressed financial challenges in your previous roles? Can you provide an example of how you transparently communicated budget decisions to stakeholders?
Yes. So finance is obviously a key piece of this position. I was in charge of the $14 million that the city of Auburn received from ARPA funding. And so one of the things that we were very strategic about was leveraging those dollars to move the city forward, to invest it in a way that we would see the returns for years to come, but not to provide cliffs. We saw a lot of communities funding positions, funding raises, funding things that we were going to have to figure out how to pay for when that funding ran out. So we did a tremendous overhaul of our IT systems, of our bringing in asset management, transitioning a lot of on-premise solutions to the cloud. We did some capital investments in a new PAL, or Police Activity League Center, some investments in the public safety building. But at the tail end of that, there was still a significant need when looking at going out for bonding for the public safety building. That overall project was about $54 million that the city was going to have to bond for. And so we knew the impact of that, did scenarios running the impact on the mill for average families, because in Maine, the cities are also in charge of assessing. And so we had just seen tremendous impacts to residents when we were forced to do adjustments and trying to put off a reval overall, which is still something that is ultimately going to have to happen. But started planning for that 2 years out before it even went to referendum, so that if it did pass, we would be in the financial place to be able to absorb that in a way that wouldn't, well, it still obviously impacted the residents, but would be less of an impact, if you will. But that on top of several significant increases to wages and to collective bargaining contracts, there was a significant increase to residents over that 4-year period. So finding ways to offset, we were able to bring in, I think, 3 or 4 major retail stores. We were able to bring in over 350 mixed apartments and senior living. So trying to find and make sure that we're bringing in additional revenues that we're also going to hopefully have a limited impact on resource allocation. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Chet?
In your past roles or projecting, to what or projecting to what you will do at Eastpointe, how have you or will you manage neighborhood investments and economic development?
Yes, that's a great question. I think the first place to look, aside from our economic development director, is looking at the master plan. And I've seen tremendous ideas and actions that have already been taken about how to create a more walkable city that also creates or drives additional business growth. If you're looking at 9 Mile, I know that there have been some conversations about road diets and about the impact that that has, and especially on parking with businesses, but that's certainly a place where there's significant opportunity. I think, as I mentioned earlier, the Kelly Road, the Kelly Complete Streets is a fantastic example where there were 8 different areas that were identified as target areas for development. So looking at, and especially in a community like Eastpointe where it is landlocked, where there's not opportunity and facing similar challenges in Glen Arden right now, to expand outwards. So you're really thinking about vertical expansion, creating mixed use opportunities where there's, and addressing kind of the missing middle where there are apartments and condos, creating an opportunity for residents to age in place, but also creating that natural turnover and cycle so that residents can transition maybe from a single family home where they don't want to maintain the yard anymore. They would prefer a one-level living place, that there are condos or apartments that are available, and all of the resources that they would need at their doorstep to make it walkable, to slow down traffic and make it safer. And I think the other piece is understanding what other major box stores or retailers are looking at, and how does Eastpointe line up with that? What changes might need to be made, whether that's zoning changes or TIF incentives to bring those stores here, but also supporting our small business. That's critical, and that's often the backbone of so many communities. So whether that's identifying money for facade or facelifts, we used to do that in the District of Columbia. The Department of Small and Local Businesses had competitive grants of up to $40,000 along our Main Street corridors for small businesses to allow them to do some of the facade improvements, to do some of the placemaking with outdoor seating for restaurants. And all of those things combined really do make an impact on a community.
Thank you. Councilman Curley.
Thank you. Can you describe your experience with modernizing public spaces and addressing aging infrastructure? What challenges did you encounter, and how did you overcome them?
It's a great question. Yes, in a couple of places, and I'll go back to the example in my presentation where we were able to dramatically increase the usage of a park. And when I say it was underutilized, I don't think anybody went there at all. The basketball courts were the concrete was broken. The swings, to say rusted is an understatement. But reimagining that, and then I think what was extremely important was there was city investment as part of our capital projects program. We invested over $1.8 million in new playgrounds, not just there, but in other locations. But then we were able to leverage those dollars to partner with AARP dollars, so that we were able to build a gazebo. We were able to, in fact, we leveraged approximately $150,000 there. And then it also had the added benefit. There were about 6 different locations throughout the city of Auburn that were deemed delinquent or out of compliance with the Land and Water Conservation Fund. And as I'm sure many of you know, when you're out of compliance there, you're ineligible for additional funding there. So this was one step, and eventually we put them all into compliance. And so we were able to receive Land and Water Conservation Fund funding to build pickleball courts there. And so it really changed that entire landscape. And phase 2 would be building out a splash pad there. And unlike Eastpointe, this part of Maine had sewer and water in certain parts of the city, but not everywhere. And so we were able to partner with the Water and Sewer District to expand water out to, or at least plan to expand water out there for a splash pad. But that also provided, because there was about a 1.5 mile stretch there on a major artery, by providing water and sewer and partnering with the state and local county for funding, now that that land is now viable for development, for additional housing, which was a tremendous need in the city. And so it served a multitude of purposes, but the infrastructure piece was a pivotal piece to making all of that work and for the next phase for the community, but also for development. I find it's extremely important to have those clarity and working partnerships to make sure that we're working smarter, not harder. We always, and part of our asset management system was making sure that we understood where replacements were going to be and aligning, or trying our best to align those water and sewer replacements with our road maintenance schedule, so that we're not going to do a mill and overlay and then 2 years later you're planning on going in there and replacing some of the clay pipes. So let's rearrange. Maybe we can move ours up a year and you can move yours back a year, and then we can do a complete road reconstruction there that will hopefully last a lot longer. And while it's more expensive, you're getting a little bit more bang for your buck. So it's thinking intentionally and creatively about those types of projects, and understanding the infrastructure too. So again, there was another project we were going to do some major development, but it was going to require going from a 10-inch line to a 12-inch line. And so how do we work with the developer to understand what that cost is going to be, who's going to shoulder it, who's benefiting from that change, and so finding some creative financial solutions to make some of those changes happen.
Thank you. Councilman?
Thank you. How do you balance the need for long-term strategic planning with the day-to-day operational needs of the city?
Yeah, that's the challenge, right? There's going to be fires. There's going to be emergencies. I think in some strange way, that's probably why many of us are attracted to this job, right? No 2 days are the same. But you can't allow yourself to get lost in the day-to-day, every day, or you do lose sight of the strategic goals. I've found, for me, it's coming in very intentionally. I'm pretty old school. I create a list every day, and it is often kind of segmented into the immediate things, whether that's returning phone calls, emails, information that needs to go out to council, who I need to check in with staff, but also making sure that there's dedicated time set aside to think about and strategize for some of the long-term goals and plans. And I found everywhere I've been, including in the district, council has been very helpful in making sure that we stay focused and on task with some of the strategic plans and strategic initiatives, because I know that council has finite terms, and so getting things done in specific windows is extremely important. And so understanding that balance, understanding and being, again, very direct, establishing that trust, and being communicative with council about where projects stand, when we're realistically going to be able to move things forward, when there are drawbacks or changes, and then what the plan is to address them. I try my best to make sure to never come before council with just a problem. Here's a couple of different solutions. Here's what staff thinks might be the best solution. Here's, kind of the decision frame that we can help provide so that council can make the best decision and obviously provide the guidance. But I think that's, kind of where
I'm going to ask one question. I think you kind of touched on this when you spoke about trust a little bit, but I'll go ahead and ask. What is your, philosophy or policy of regarding employees communicating with council members?
Sure. That does align with trust. I think it's important to understand that we're all human, and staff is going to talk, and council is going to talk, and that's okay. I think what I find most important is to understand and engage with council in a way that allows fluidity and continuity between the team and the staff and council. I think where it can become challenging and where some roadblocks can be set up is when a staff member and a council member or council members are conversing directly without the knowledge of the city manager and moving things or projects in various directions. Because I think one of the roles and responsibilities of the city manager is to keep that macro perspective. And so, and I've seen, the best of intentions in something that seems very small or minute actually is a much bigger challenge or can create bigger challenges down the road. And it was absolutely unintentional, but had the city manager been aware, had the assistant city manager been aware, they would have been at least able to provide that input and say, we can do this, but let's take this particular approach, and that way it won't, leave the city open to these particular challenges over here. Or I hear you, and I think we can move in that direction, but maybe a month from now, because these are the things that are coming down the pike that, are time sensitive or require, a specific level of engagement. Because I think it depends on what department it is, the size of the department, the size of the request, all of these different things that I think the city manager should have insight and awareness into that perhaps a particular staff member may not. But at the same time, I want staff and I want council to feel all one, because at the end of the day, we're all trying to serve the residents. And so it is finding that balance and that fine line. But I definitely am a strong believer that the city manager should certainly be aware and able to help facilitate those requests and those conversations. Certainly.
We're kind of coming up near the end of our time. Did council have any follow-up questions that you wanted to ask specifically? No. All right, I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Petrino.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Brian, great job throughout the process. I appreciate your commitment and dedication. We're right at time, but I'm going to provide you with the last 30 seconds.
Is your mic on? I'm sorry.
Thank you, Brian, for your commitment to the process. We're coming right here up at end of time, but I would like to reserve the last minute for you if you'd like to share any final thoughts with City Council or the community.
Absolutely. Well, I would like to start by thanking council, thanking you for such a smooth process, council for inviting me into the community, for coming out and engaging with us, and for those that may be watching, thank you. I do know Eastpointe is a special place. I have a toddler, well, I guess he's four now, a puppy and a wife, and I can say that, as I spoke in my presentation, stability, continuity are things that are extremely important to me, and home is something that's extremely important to me, and that's what I'm looking for. That's what we're looking for. So is my goal and my hope, that Eastpointe would be a place where, yes, I would be able to be the city manager serving this great community, but I would be able to be a part of this community for years to come. And that's something that's extremely important to me. And I'm sure I'll get a little gruff from my family down south, but that's okay. So thank you again for the time. And I look forward to hopefully speaking and engaging with everybody soon. Thank you.
For council, you have about a 4-minute break if you want to stretch your legs. I will escort this candidate out, and we'll bring the next candidate in. They'll start with the first question. Thank you.
Who's next? Oh. Oh, man, okay.
We got a minute. I want to use the
Yeah, I got 4 minutes.
little councilman's room.
Sorry, I realized I stuck you with the two-parter. Are we cool with just keeping it the same for everyone?
Yeah.
Did bring like something on the left of the car. Oh, wow, those are huge.
Isn't that crazy? I was at Randazzo's this week.
Do they have seeds in them?
No.
No? Wow.
Well, I mean, there might be a little, but they're seedlings. This one's like, tons.
And I remember to turn my microphone on, so I feel much better about myself. And thank you very much for being here this morning. Thank you also for the preparation you've done, both in meeting with me prior as part of the screening process, meeting with the directors yesterday, the public this morning. Appreciate your commitment to this process. We have some planned questions for you this morning. The first question you were provided in advance, and you did provide a written response to the city council members, which they have in front of them and can read at their leisure, but I assume you will also walk them through it in response to, I'll ask the first question, and then they will ask questions after that. So the first question is, you've been asked to provide a presentation to city council, introducing yourself and your professional background, and expressing your interest on why you want to become the next city manager of Eastpointe, and potentially identifying any opportunities that you see for Eastpointe. So it's kind of a three-part question, but it's mainly to get to know you and your intent and your interest in the position at this time. I will turn the floor to you, Ann.
Thank you. Can you hear me? He said I cannot do tap dancing, so I said, good on table, do it. But good morning. I'm happy to be here. My name is Ann Capella. Full name is Anna Catarina Capella. Wanted to introduce myself. I gave you a little bit of a write-up, but I think professionally, I have a master's degree from Wayne State University. I love my university. It's a great university. No offense to other universities. I have a very, very wide career. I have served in very different structures of governments. I have been a county executive officer, a town manager, a township manager, a city manager. So I have a very worldwide perspective of how cities and government, local governments function. In fact, I've written some articles on that, how they function. So instead of taking you from way back, I'm going to try and take you from some of the immediate places. So I'm currently working for Royal Oak Township. I was hired there as interim for 6 months, and 3 years later, I'm still there. I have a lot of projects going on. One of my strengths is been very good at writing grants. We are now managing about $23 million worth of grants, including EPA, water grants, sewer grants, senior chores grants. We help out seniors doing their chores, particularly those who qualify so they can keep and stay in their homes with dignity. Labor grants, particularly. So we have a wide variety of Mishta home grants to study housing situations. So I'm pretty good at writing grants, 23 million. I'm also the person who manages those grants. So somebody asked me a couple of days ago who helps me out, and usually it's just me. Royal Oak Township is a very small township, and the reason I know Eastpointe is because you are represented at the 8 Mile Association. So I'm very familiar from that perspective and meet with people from 8 Mile Association, the goals of keeping up with the 8 Mile. And I did not know 8 Mile Road was 23 miles long. It's quite the road. So we're working there on water. We currently have an EPA grant for about $3.5 million, plus additional different grants from the Treasury, State Treasury. So we're replacing water mains, putting in 8-inch mains to have better water pressure and less breakage, less loss. The first time they've done this in about 100 years. All the sewers and waters are very old. We've just lined the sewers, so working with that. We have a $1 million DNR grant for refurbishing park, so that's ongoing. Those are some of the major grants that we have. If any of you are familiar with the township structure, I have a lot of responsibilities and no authority, so, but I still manage to get all those grants done, and I think that's what they're happy with the amount of money that have been brought into a very small community. Royal Oak Township has never had that much money in all their existence. So it's a lot of excitement there. I work with a lot of seniors. We have some youth programs, so I'm engaged in every one of those, particularly the Parks and Recreation Committee counts on me doing the work. something that may be of interest to you, and I think, I can talk about my other experiences, was with City of Inkster. City of Inkster, when I first went to Inkster, I took a tour of the buildings, and I took a tour of the police station and the courts. And that day, I promised the chief he's going to get a new police department. It took a lot of late-night meetings, financing, TIFA financing, tax increment financing, bonds, selling, preparing. But eventually, if you drive down on Michigan Avenue in the city of Inkster, you will see an old YWC or YMCA that was refurbished to Justice Center with the new police department. But with that, we brought in a lot of partners. We brought in the state to bring their driver's license. The Department of Motor Vehicles came in, there's social services. You're always looking for partners because there's never something that you have to do alone. Always bring in your state partners, your federal partners, and private developers. So as a result of that project, that changed the face of Michigan Avenue. And that's what I think, when you're driving through Eastpointe, Gratiot, or whatever, when you're looking at changing the face of the main thoroughfare, because it is a main thoroughfare. So I think we're very, very successful in that. All those cities that I work for generally they have labor agreements. Have very successfully worked with our labor groups. I respect them. In fact, when I left Bethel, Alaska, the AFSCME Western leadership agreed to be a reference, because we've had union agreements that expired 3-4 years and no one ever touched them, but we were successful in negotiating those labor unions. So there was a number of things, again, when I was in Bethel, Alaska, which is way western, not with no roads. It's a little bit different. No roads and no money. But a lot of different issues, particularly in the area of sewers and water. You cannot build pipes underneath the ground there, so there's a lot of it. So if I was to show you what my strengths are, it's usually people and money. I'm very good with money and the budgets. I would endeavor to know where every penny of the city's money is. Very frugal with money. Want to make sure that we meet the budget. Budget is a tool. There are emergencies. So I have a very background, particularly when I worked in Imperial County. I loved working in California. It was an 86-mile border with Mexico. And doing construction project from both sides of the border is a very intense way. Plus, we had to litigate because the contractor went broke. So I bring all these experiences to the table. Bring a little bit of wisdom. I'm of the opinion that you should measure twice, cut once, because you are spending the people's money. So I'm very happy to be going with the community. I'm an avid attendant at SEMCOGs. I encourage the cities to make sure they're represented in Lansing and in Washington. You are stakeholders. And, I was asked also what attracted me to apply for this position. I would say to you that the first thing that attracted me was after talking to James, I liked the structure of government here. There are some ways, there are easier ways to work, but you have a very good structure of government, a very good family-friendly city. There's a lot of opportunity, particularly in housing. We are involved in Royal Oak Township. The township has partnered with Southwest Solutions to build brand new 28 affordable homes, 2-story, high-end, very, very attractive homes. If we didn't do that, it's not a financial bonus, but if we didn't do that, those lots would have been empty, and the township owns about 120 empty lots. So at some point, but since we've done that, the amount of developers that have called and inquired and want to come out and look at the lots, it's been tremendous. So sometimes we had to invest a little bit in order to attract the business. So I think that I'm a very good fit for the city of Eastpointe. I've known a number of people who have managed here. I wondered, why they didn't stay. I have a lot of respect for your staff. I met them yesterday. I think we went on really well. You have great staff, and I think I can tap into some of their best skills. So is that 8 minutes? I didn't even time it, I just kind of go on it.
Thank you for that introduction. And then we're going to move into questions from council members, and I will throw it over to Councilman DeMonico.
Should I take notes?
Up
If
to
you'd
you.
like, yeah. All right, thank you for the introduction there, Ms. Capello. In your view, what makes a city like Eastpointe successful, and how would you ensure Eastpointe achieves or maintains that standard?
Well, my basic premise, there are at least three or four portions, is infrastructure. You, as a city, remember historically why cities became cities after the Black Plague. The first thing we had to do is take care of water and sewer and garbage. So if we can deliver services where people can turn on their shower, turn on their water, flush their toilet, and pick up their garbage, they're pretty well happy. And wintertime, they want their snow removed. So those are the qualities that I see and what makes the city successful. But City of Eastpointe has opportunities, and you need to seize the opportunity. As the old movie goes, carpe diem, seize the day, every day. I believe there's a lot of opportunities, particularly when you look at the location, because the City of Eastpointe is a great location. You have the city of Detroit, which is just blossoming, and this would be a perfect sort of a community to attract young Google workers, Microsoft workers. It's affordable homes still here, but we do have to, one, offer them, good roads, water, and parks. And, one would never think that park is a basis for economic development, but it is. Parks are essential for attracting families and healthy, having a healthy environment. And, I'm a little bit partial to parks because I do a lot of hiking and bicycling. But I believe it's a very good mental health outlook.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilwoman Piszczadlik.
Mine's two-part. So how would you describe your management and leadership style? And the second part is, please identify both strengths and weaknesses related to your management and leadership approach.
In the academic realm, forgive me for sometimes being a professor, but in the academic realm, there are two styles of management. And the two styles that I identify with most is, first, you have a consultative style. So if you have an issue with department heads or something's happening, you have to consult with people and you try to find the point where everybody agrees. Now, not everybody's going to agree, but if 80% agree, we can move forward with that. And you discuss things and try to find a way to do that. And an example of that is when I worked in Wisconsin, we were developing a new logo for the county. There was a lot of inputs. People had ideas, but eventually, you take all the logos, you put it together, and it was a consensus type of environment, and we reached a consensus. The other style is more of a consultative style. You consult with the experts, but in the end, you make the decision. The buck stops here. You make the decision, you own the decision, and you be responsible for that decision. But a manager that does not take input from department heads, which are specialists in their subjects, would not be wise. Stay humble and talk to everyone. But in the end, you own the decision. So those are the two styles of management. Sometimes the style of management, when every department head wants a tractor, a pickup truck, a fire engine, all the departments want these, and they have needs. And sometimes I have to take in what needs, and I take a look at what would be the best way to, what are the needs, the safety issues, and I will make a decision. Not everybody is happy, but everybody has their input. And I think those are the two styles. The wisdom is, when do you use which one? That's what I bring to you with experience. I have a vast amount of experience, dealt with many issues, and I can probably apply some wisdom.
Thank you very much. Councilman Curley.
Thank you. What do you consider essential in the relationship between a city manager and the city council? And how will you facilitate a productive relationship with the city council?
Thank you for the question. It is, the city council as a governing body sets the policies. The essential is communications, and I know everybody's tired of, but with the advent of technology, whether you want, I will meet with council people who want to meet, talk about a topic, but I will assume that if you have a question, one council member, that a lot of other council members probably have the same. And my door is always open. I will not, sit behind closed doors, but I will assume that all of you want to know that question. I think the city manager should report, do a report every month on activities and what's going on. So you don't, and you should have an open dialogue. You should not be afraid to call it because you want to verify something that you've heard in the community. I want to know what you hear in the community. So I think open dialogue, honesty, emails, when you send an email to one councilman, everybody gets copies. Because I will assume that everyone else is curious about a particular topic. I think I get to know council. Now, I've worked with, one of my jobs, I worked in the county that I had 35 county board members, 35. So it was an interesting communications, and it really taught me a lot about communicating with the governing body. So my goal is to have an open door with you, able to discuss things, and I will assume that if you have questions, everyone else on council may want to have that information. I think you always have to be careful among council not to go over the Open Meetings Act, and with such a small body, 3 of you meet and darn it, you could be breaking that Open Meetings Act. So I'm very approachable. And you must forgive me if I get professorial. Just tell me to stop that lesson in political science. But I welcome your opinion because you are a representative of the public. I respect the structure and will work with you.
Thank you. Councilman Baker.
Thank you. How do you ensure that the needs and concerns of the community are incorporated into the city decision-making process?
Well, first of all, every city council has public input section or public comment on their agenda that they take that in. And you have to, many citizens come and talk to me. I'm very happy to go out to various luncheons and meet the community. I have spoken at many luncheons. I have been a guest speaker. I work with schools. I think if I want to know a lot of things, I just got to go and visit and chat with the seniors. They know everything. You talk to the seniors, they know everything that's going on in the community. And I think be approachable. And there are formal process that you can do, put up commissions or findings or a committee, which is great. But public consultation are almost required on every grant that we've had. So I'm very used to that, whether it's public consultation. For instance, if you're going to do a 5-year park plan, Parks and Rec plan, you have to have public consultation. You don't have to go to the fullest extent of the charrettes, which is extensive and, all of that. You can do mini charrettes. You can do mini inputs. But if you're doing a community plan, it won't be accepted until you demonstrate that you've done public input. So there are mechanisms, formal and informal, to do that. And having a dialogue with public is better. It's like when everybody comes together to build a barn, the old saying, everybody helps to build a barn that people won't complain because they've all built the barn. Well, maybe some will complain. But, if they're helping to build the barn, they most likely will have a stake in building the barn. And you really should have the community input up front so you don't have all that criticism in the back. And sometimes, more often than not, the people who are on the ground, the boots on the ground, they know what's going on. We don't know. They know every inch of their neighborhood. They know how their neighbors think. So it's not a bad idea to listen to people who have a little bit of experience, and it really is affecting their life. So it's a good thing.
And there's just a little follow-up. Can you describe a situation you've handled where the community faced issues with strong diverging opinions, and what did you learn from that experience?
I had an opportunity to work, a gentleman flew into the town where I work, Minturn, Colorado. And Minturn, Colorado is on the other side of Vail. Everybody's property is worth over $1 million. Everybody's a millionaire there. He offered to annex 5,000 acres into the town. And you have a town of 1,500 people and you annex 5,000 acres and raise all the property values. It is necessary to have the public input and take your time. This is the situation where you measure twice and cut once. The public that was involved it changed the shape of the town. It really brought in a lot of changes, the dynamics of the town. And the lesson there is, it was very good to have the public input, because some of the public, particularly the seniors, they knew about the lead mine. They knew about all of these things that we didn't know. And of course, in the end, they got a better deal. The developer built the water plant for them. The developer built an outdoor theater for them. 5,000 acres is a lot of acres to bring into the town. So the lessons learned was, have the public involved up front so you have less friction in the back, and have the public involved where the benefits are, and see where the benefits are. And every time there is a development, I will negotiate and fight for benefits. Those developers need to provide benefits to the community if they're going to benefit from the community. I mean, you got to fight right up front. Is that politically not good word, fight?
Yes, thank you. All right. I have a question for you. The city is very focused on building a positive employee culture among staff at all levels. What is your experience with intentional building and maintaining a positive culture in an organization?
I think I mentioned to you, my strength is people and money. If you have people and manage money well, you can really effectuate change. Academically wise, my major was public personnel management and financing, so I am very familiar with it. I have a lot of respect for the union. Many years ago, in my young days, I was a member of UAW. I have a lot of respect. If there wasn't what happened in our history, you would have never needed a union. So I have a respect for that. But they also have respect for me, because we only have so much money. Positive culture, I can't think of where I had a negative culture with employees, but it happens. Having an open door, and when something goes wrong, get it in early. Talk to people early. My philosophy to department heads is, if you make a mistake, let me know that's a mistake. We can fix mistakes. The only error you cannot fix is when you're 6 feet under. Otherwise, we can fix mistakes. And I ask them to be honest. And if there is an error, let's not lie, but be open with counsel, and let's see how we can fix the error. Usually, we all learn from errors. So that's the kind of culture that I have. I understand people have families, and families are a priority, and they have to take time off for families. I can work with that. I am particularly keen on getting department heads or individuals who are interested in bettering and moving up in a career, going to management, particularly if they want to go to school. I will share with you that in 2 of my positions, I had an assistant who did not have a college degree. but we made an agreement that she could take time off every Tuesday afternoon and Thursday afternoon to go take classes, and she would come in on Saturday to help out with filing and all of that. She did receive her bachelor's, and she's always been a great friend and supporter. And I've done that on 2 occasions when a young woman would be my assistant, and I said, do you have a college, do you want to do that? Can I find a way to facilitate that? And I always encourage for people to keep up with the profession, join professional associations, you know, be informed and keep up with your skills. And I think that employees really appreciate that. They really appreciate that.
Councilman DeMonico.
All right. How have you successfully addressed financial challenges in your previous roles? Can you provide an example of how you transparently communicated budget decisions to stakeholders?
Let me give you the most recent. 3 years ago when I came to Royal Oak Township, you know, the township was under a consent agreement for a number of years. They couldn't pay their bills. This year, 2024, we will have a clean audit, not one finding. So that I'm worked very hard for that. I brought in some professional, Raymond, which is an accounting company. And we worked very hard. And we also have BSNA software, which I'm very familiar with, and I will click on those expenses and see where it's going, where they're budgeting, talk to the department heads. If they are budgeting five years in a row for same item, they haven't used it, I usually say, you're not gonna get that. You know, obviously you're transferring money for something else. So let's just be realistic of what we can and can do. So budgets are my strength. I've done capital improvement budget. In an example, in Inkster, Inkster's not a city that's, you know, wealthy, and they needed to do a number of things. So I went out and got partners. Wayne County became a partner. We signed a lease agreement with them and then monetized the lease agreement to borrow money. We created a TIF district, tax increment financing. It's a financial tool, managed properly. I have actually been to New York City to do bond rating on 2 occasions. When I worked in Walworth County, Wisconsin, the reason they were falling apart is because they got into Orange County derivatives investments and lost a lot of money, of taxpayer money. They had an incredibly huge organizational structure, and the bonders, Moody's said, hey, you know, straighten out your house and then come back, see if we increase your bond rating. And 1 point bond rating can save you $1 million worth of interest. So it was a little bit harder. There was 27 unions, you know, there were all these, you know, under a county structure. It was a lot of fiefdoms, and it took about a year and a half, maybe 2, to put it together and present that change to where we got a better bond rating. So, you know, you have to learn how to work with that money. In California, we monetized the tobacco settlement money. You remember that there was a lot of tobacco settled with various counties. So we took the money, we monetized it, took it to you know, finance companies and see what we can derive from that monetization and how much we can use on capital improvement infrastructure. And that's, you know, partnership, various instruments that exist, and you know, go out there and knock on doors. Never be afraid to ask.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Pachetlik.
In your past roles, or projecting to what you will do at Eastpointe, how have you, or will you, manage neighborhood investments and economic development? And I was also asked to provide a specific example of what you have done or would plan to do as our city manager.
Well, I personally write the CDBG grants for Royal Oak Township, so I'm very familiar what's available, whether you do it through neighborhood investments, NSP, or do you do with CDBG. You know, that's very controlled, but there is ways to do that. There's also an opportunity, which I don't know if you made yourself available. MISHDA gives out about $50,000 grant, so you can actually do some studies and take that study forward, use it as your base. So there are some opportunities to do that, and that's what I would look for, see if you have them. I didn't get a chance to talk to staff about whether they approached MISHDA for these studies, and you can do that. That way you develop partnerships with state agencies and federal agencies. So I think that neighborhood developments is essential. The new housing that is 28 new homes that are being built, instead of building multiple unit housings, we chose to build single-family homes. You have to have at least five people. There's 3-bedroom homes, 2 bathrooms, 2 stories, single garage. They're awesome. We hope to attract only people that will be able to, is families. And when you lift 3 or 4 streets up like that and you pepper those homes in there, the brand new homes, it makes every house on that block, that whole neighborhood is lifted. And there's no doubt that, once you have a brand new home with a little bit of landscaping, you're gonna look at the neighbor and like, okay, well, I better do something, I think it's just natural that works that way. So those are the neighborhood type of improvements. I think parks are essential in a particular neighborhood. Every park every neighborhood has a small park, whether you have pocket parks or large parks. Those are great amenities to the neighborhood. And I think there are several programs for neighborhood improvements, but I'd have to work with you to see what's available here as far as land and where we could do that. And CDBG, we use it in Royal Oak Township. We use it to augment our code enforcement because we are very conscious about having health and safety of residents. We don't want buildings that are falling apart and, things that are dangerous buildings that attract nefarious events. So there are ways to do that. I would have to talk, see what you have available as far as land use, because I don't know if any one of you sit on the Planning Commission. Land use is the one single tool you can use for development. That's your single tool. It's a very powerful tool. Community planning is very powerful, and that's where you get the community input in the planning, in the stages. People give their inputs. We've done them with parks and seniors, and those usually work really well. Those seniors are awesome. They always come out. Did I answer your question? Mm-hmm. Oh,
Yes, thank you. All right, Councilman Curley.
No, thank you.
I'm so excited.
Can you describe your experience with modernizing public spaces and addressing aging infrastructure? What challenges did you encounter and how did you overcome them?
Well, again, I'm just going to hearken to my recent experience in parks, which is a public space. In Inkster, there was a park with a lot of different trees. We had we talked to the DNR about identifying trees and, bringing in children. A lot of our children, can't identify trees. So it was a good learning experience. Now, in Royal Oak Township, we identify Civic Center Park. I had the opportunity to sit down and literally structure and write a grant with another help from Oakland County, a young planner. We were successful in obtaining $1 million. I'm sorry, $997.25. I still call it $1 million. And this was for very limited, so we were going to do the infrastructure, the walkway. And then we realized that it did not include public restrooms. We'd like to have some public restrooms. So you have to go out and look for funders where we can obtain funding to install public restrooms. Royal Oak Township does not have a general fund. Everything we do is with grants. I go out and look for money. And usually it's there. What you have to do is you have to have a great narrative to your funders. And when you develop that narrative and the needs, you can be very successful. So I think public spaces are very, very important. I'd be very much in favor of trying to look at some pathways. I do know that City of Eastpointe and City of Roseville have a joint Parks and Rec agreement. I'm not sure how that's working for you. It may be. I know the state is always trying to say, okay, well, if you have partnership with that city, you may have more money. I'm not sure how that is working for the city. I don't know how you govern that, but I'm a big proponent of public spaces, public squares. I was trying to figure out here what is, if you had a big star, movie star come in, where would you hold a public gathering here? That was my question. Is there one? Would you like to see one? Have your public square where you can welcome the governor or whatever. So, but anyway, do you want me to go on, or is that sufficient?
Oh, thank you.
It's public spaces are very, very important. Very important. It's the sort of, this is where you see the soul of the community. What's going on in the community.
Thank you. Councilman Baker.
Thank you. How do you balance the need for long-term strategic planning with the day-to-day operational needs of the city?
Well, if you look at your reporting, the universal reporting, we used to call them CAFR, I think there's a different, which is the comprehensive review plan. Every comprehensive review plan should have a capital, at least a 10-year, 15-year capital improvement plan. You have to keep that on your radar, because if you as a city do not invest in refurbishing and replenishing your police cars, fire engines, any equipment, computer equipment, that should be one of the things on the list always. You have to do that. With that training, so that is looking down and making sure that you have managing the needs and matching funds. Now, as I mentioned to you before, there are a number of tools. There are people who will offer you leasing. There's a lot of leasing. They'll say, oh, you don't buy it, just, lease it. If you have the money, I wouldn't lease it. But if you don't have money, there is a way to have new equipment and, lease to buy. That is a little more expensive, but depending on what the situation is. You never want to borrow money for operations. You always have to have. My philosophy is that you should have at least 20% of your general fund in an undesignated fund balance. You should have enough money that you can operate for 6 months, pay your bills, and pay your employees. That should always be set aside. That would be my goal. And I don't know what your undesignated balance is, but that would be my goal financially.
Thank you. I have a follow-up question. I don't think you really touched on this too much. Obviously, administration is separate from council. The city manager is in charge of all the employees, and we're more the legislative side. Do you have a philosophy or policy on employees communicating with council members?
Well, that's a touchy subject, and that's something that can go wrong. I've experienced both. I have experienced a department head having a meltdown. That's never a good idea. He had to have some time off. But my philosophy would be they need to at least let me know first. It's not a good situation when employees go behind the city manager's back and start, let me know. Let's talk about it. Look me in the eye. Let me know what's going on. I mean, if it's an employee issue, they should be able to feel free enough to talk to me. And I am aware that a lot of employees will, like to get new truck or this or that, and they, have this. But I will say to you that my experience at one time, we were negotiating a contract with police. I can't remember police or whatever. And the council member was out for, socially out in the bar for drinks, and, oh yeah, no problem, we'll just do this. Well, within 24 hours, the labor union says, hey, your councilman promised us this. And the council person got thinking, maybe I was just joking. We were in a bar setting, but that really got, you know, you need to be careful. And sometimes in a very humorous way, council members all have insurance. But if a council member acts outside of their scope of duties, sometimes it can get very, very difficult for them. So, and if a council member hears from someone, come and talk to me, let me know. I heard from so-and-so, is this true? Is this what's going on? I know it, because it happens. You're elected and you see people every day. You can't separate that. You'll be in the grocery store. Just try not to commit yourself to anything in the grocery store line, because you know it can get yourself into a little bit of hot water there. You know, I'm always nice, but come and let's talk about it, and at least let me know. Have trust in me that I will address the issue. I think trust among council and the city manager is really, really important. And I know it will take time for you, you know, to develop that trust and to see, you know, how we all both work. But, you know, I have a long history, good history. Measure twice and cut once.
Thank you. Any follow-up questions from council members? I had one I wanted to ask. You spoke about, you know, vacant properties, developing them. How many vacant lots did you say Royal Oak Township had?
120.
120.
Single lots, and some turn out to be a little bit of an environmental issue.
So given sort of your background with financing and watching the budget, one of our discussions we have here constantly is after 2008, we had to outsource a lot of the services we did internally. Do you have a philosophy towards trying to keep things in-house, outsourcing? I mean, what are your thoughts?
I have had good experiences with outsourcing, and I've had bad experiences. And, you know, having the wisdom. More often than not, you do have to bring somebody, because we just, you know, the smaller cities just don't have the staff. And it also depends on the strength of the staff. Inkster, when I was there, never needed to outsource anything for staff. We had a good planner, although he got himself a little bit of hot water, but we had a good planner and good, you know, a very knowledgeable staff. He was an AICP plan, he was, you know, certified, he knew his stuff. We had one civil engineer, so when we did any kind of sewer, water, you have to bring in an engineering company. You can't do that with one engineer. So it just depends on the situation. It depends on the strength of the staff to have that control over somebody who you bring in. You know, I'm thrilled that we brought in Raymond. They helped the township tremendously, accounting firm where we got a clean audit. There just isn't the depth of staff knowledge. So it just, you have to assess that. There are appropriate times. I've been through experience where the county tried to outsource and privatize jails, and I never thought that would work. And you know, depending if you have legal issues, you shouldn't really outsource your work. I was never in favor of outsourcing jail. It was just, and the companies were offering fantastic deals. I mean, they promised you the moon, and I just couldn't have. But, you know, again, it depends on the project. For instance, when we do a large sewer project like this and the water project, we have, you know, I think Hubble, Rock, and Clark, and you look for their expertise and you know, put out an RFQ, find out about the companies, and I know quite a few companies. So it depends on the situation, but I met your staff, the city staff, not your city staff.
Yeah.
And there was a pretty good group. They were very knowledgeable. They were very knowledgeable in their own topic. So I would like to see the strengths that they have and the opinion they have. And they would have to be comfortable in bringing in an outsourced expert. Because if the department head is not comfortable, it usually gets a lot of tension in there. So it's never a good situation, and the projects become less effective.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from council? Mr. Vitrano?
Thank you, Ann, for your time this morning. I want to provide you with the last minute or so if you'd like to share anything with city council and the public as we close your interview.
First of all, I thank you for the opportunity. It's great. I can't thank you enough for that. Second of all, if I'm hired, I will do my best for you. You may even have to call me at night and say, get out of the office. You've been there for 14 hours. One of the complaints I had, my current supervisor, you mean you're still there? It's 8 o'clock, go home. So I work very hard. I will work very hard for you. And try not to embarrass the council. I have a lot of integrity, a lot of professional background. I value the professional association. I'm a lifelong member of International City County Management Association. I value that, and I wouldn't trade that for any kind of benefit. Integrity, I will ensure that everybody runs their office with integrity. There's just no room for wishy-washiness. And if successful, I don't think you'll ever be sorry you hired me. I think you'll be excited.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ann. City council members, we'll again take about a 5-minute break while I escort this candidate out and we prepare for the next candidate. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Resuming our meeting, it's 11:57. I will hand it over to Mr. Vitrino.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. We have our third candidate. Ryan, thank you for joining us this afternoon, no, almost afternoon. Thank you for your preparation throughout the process, the early screenings with me, yesterday's meeting with department heads. Really appreciate the dedication you provided to this process. At this point, what you'll do is I will introduce you with your first question. You're ready with your PowerPoint presentation for City Council. After that, they will have a series of questions that they will ask. And then at the end, we'll have a brief moment for you to provide a closing statement. So with that, we've asked you to prepare a presentation and introduce yourself, express your interest in the position, and any opportunities you're excited about as they pertain to Eastpointe. So the floor is yours, Ryan.
Wonderful. Thank you, James. Can everybody hear me okay? Thank you. And I just want to say thank you for having me today. And I want to thank James as well for running a very good process. I appreciate his thoroughness, and he's done a great job. So made a great choice there. So welcome to me, I guess. I'm excited to give this presentation. I do not love talking about myself. So I think I'll do my best. I think you'll see that. But I would much rather talk about wonky things or policy or budgets, but let's talk about me for a few minutes, shall we? First off, I'll introduce myself. I'm Ryan Mattis. I grew up not too far up Gratiot from here in the city of Marysville. So I've been on this side of Michigan for most of my life. After college, I moved up north, where I lived in Roscommon County for nearly 15 years, worked in higher education, worked in nonprofits and campaigns and things like that before I realized that government is really where it's at. I worked on a federal campaign and realized that federal government is fine, but the actual difference making happens at the local level. And so I've been invested in that for the last several years, working in roles in the Charter Township of Oscoda in Iosco County, and then moving to the village of Ortonville in Oakland County, and now I work in economic development in the city of Flint in Genesee County. So I'm all over the place. My map has lots of stars on it. I want to introduce you to my family as well. They're very important to me. My wife, Carly, is a rock star. She is a math teacher by trade. So we have complementary skills. We have different passions. Mine is not math, hers is not local government, but we work really well together. And then we have two young kids. Maggie is my 2-year-old she's 2 going on 25, and she is our boss. And then my 4-year-old Kayline is also a Tigers fan, so I'm glad that we chose a good name for him. We have lived in Flint for the last 3 or so years, but we are eager to relocate. I've worked in several different municipalities, and I'm trying to find that place that's the right fit. And we know there's one more move in our future, and we'd like to move in this direction. So I talked through my work experience a little bit, some other notables. I'm a lifelong learner. I think learning continues throughout life in so many different ways, so I'm constantly training and learning in whatever I can. I love to read. I was a coach. Coaching's in my background too, so building up people and building teams is very important to me. Like I said, I grew up in Marysville, then I went to U of M in Ann Arbor, and then I have an MPA from Western as well. And when I'm not working, I like to travel. I love to explore cities and see how other places do things. I love to be in the woods and see mountains as well through hiking. We are baseball crazy in our family, as you can tell there. And I love house projects. I bought an old house that requires constant repair, right? We love old houses. Why I'm a great fit for Eastpointe. I actually really love road projects and streetscapes. I think those things are the actual fabric that community is built on. So I think that is huge in any community to do these projects and do them well. So that's something I really enjoy. I've learned big city systems and how it can happen in big places, as well as what it takes to do projects individually in small towns, places like Ortonville. So I've learned both. I've seen the difference. I know, I understand how to make things go. I love to deep dive into policy or things like that, but I've also been a guy who carries a shovel for a whole summer, and I've worked in facilities as well. So I understand process, I value process, and I know when to act. So I love to think through things, but then when it's time to act, it's time to act. So I think that my values align really well with the character of Eastpointe. I think my skill set would be an asset to the community, and I continue to learn and grow, just like Eastpointe. I am excited for Eastpointe for several reasons. I think it's exciting to see a community that's pretty stable. Financially, there's staff, there's residents that are committed to this community, and that is very encouraging to see. I think there's a great mix of projects that are already underway. There's planning for some, there's potential for future projects. There's a lot of meat on the bone. There's a lot of very cool things to happen in Eastpointe in the near future. I think there's huge potential as well for smart, strategic growth that we can put our finger on the scale and develop and change in ways that we want to see. I think it's encouraging to see these projects, to see the momentum that's building. And last, just like Oscar, I love trash. So as a city manager, that's one of the things we get to do, right? As elected officials, we get to hear about trash, we get to hear about potholes. We love trash, we love potholes, and we tolerate snow when we have to. A particular project of interest, one that I've heard about already quite a bit, is the 9-mile corridor plan. I know it's one that everybody is passionate about, we'll say. And it is a project that I think has huge potential. It can be a catalyst for some really positive change in the community. So I value a good implementation table, like I outlined here on our slide, that I think it's important to know who's responsible for what and what some potential next steps are on a process. But this reminds me of projects I've worked on before. So going back to Oscoda Township, we have US 23 running right through downtown in Oscoda. You may be familiar if you've headed up the Sunrise side. And so we got to work very closely with MDOT and lots of partners to try to develop and fill vacancies in that stretch of US 23. That it was a challenge. And so when there were water main replacements and things like that, it greatly impacted residents and businesses and everybody. So to just work through and communicate those things, it was an adventure, but it's one that we got through, and the community is better for it now. In Ortonville, we developed a downtown plan, which hadn't happened before. So if you're not familiar with Ortonville, it's a small community in the northwest corner of Oakland County, where it is densely populated, surrounded by very rural areas. And so it's a spot where everything happens. It's where all the events happen. It's where all the action is in Brandon Township and the surrounding townships as well. And so we created a plan to make downtown more viable for businesses. There's some limiting factors in Ortonville, as I'll tell you all about sewers if you want to hear about sewers, but there's some limiting factors that create some hardships there. So to work through those with business owners and residents and try to make cohesive plans that work for everybody is something we've done. And then in Flint, I work on corridors where as you drive into town, you see things that aren't all that welcoming, right? So to try to improve the corridors, some of the commercial areas, just work on improving areas. We know that we can't, with a broad brush, fix everything all at once, but that we can make small improvements along the way and work in pockets to see bigger change is very important to me, and it's something I've done previously. It is really helpful to see the plans that exist. A lot of times communities know that there's a problem, or you know that something needs to happen, but it just ends in that theoretical something needs to happen. And so to see that there's an effort to plan and engage residents, talk through it with businesses, there's a track to run on to change things, especially on 9 Mile as well as Kelly. But to see that there's a plan in place to start working on, just improving, changing the community in ways that we want to see. Like I said, smart growth is a good thing. So I've led efforts to get buy-in and to move projects in ways that work for all stakeholders. It's not an easy thing. There can be some gnashing of teeth and some tough conversations, but it is important to try to build, and as things change, to do that in the most cohesive way possible. Just got 2 more slides for you, sorry. So digging deeper, I think the engagement piece is huge. It's very encouraging to see that through the master plan process and through some of the corridor plans, there's already some engagement that takes place. But I think just having an open door and hearing from residents and stakeholders and business owners, just hearing from everyone what they want to see or what they don't want to see, things like that, I think that engagement is huge. I learned through campaigns that a lot of times you have those conversations that they say, I don't like your candidate because, and you get to hear all the negative things, right? But through that, you can usually find a kernel of this is something we agree on. This is something that we know is a bedrock thing that we agree on. So how can we cultivate that? Where can we take that seed and try to water it and grow it a little bit instead of just dwelling on the negative? What can we find that's positive, and what can we work on together? So that engagement is big. I think moving the needle is very important as well. A lot of times, we don't have a magic wand where we can just say, we're gonna go change the streetscape and we're gonna do this overnight. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes a long time. So I think moving the needle is something we're celebrating. A lot of times it's just those small 2% changes that changes the direction of everything. So it can be a little thing like we have more code enforcement, and so there's less issues with trash or with repair shops that have stuff outside. Or it can just be the littlest thing that makes a huge difference in a community so that you start to see the sunny side of things instead of dwelling on the negative. So celebrating small wins is very big. Another part of opportunities is that I know that I do not know everything. And so I am eager to learn along with Eastpointe. I think I truly appreciate the opportunity to learn and get to know people in the community. I think local government is a relay race. I think we stand on the shoulders of giants and the people who've come before us, and we get to be stewards of the community while we're here and try to do our best with this and hand it off to a future generation down the line. But to run the best race that we can while the baton is in our hands. And finally, I just want to say thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. I am so grateful to be here. I'm excited to talk with you more today. I just thank you for the opportunity to share about myself, but if we could get back to other stuff like budgets and projects and policy minutia, or even if you want to talk Tigers for an hour, that's fine by me. Just, we can stop talking about me. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. You'll be able to get into budgets with all our questions and stuff like that. So I'll kick it over to Councilman DeMonico. He's going to start us off.
Off this time, all right. Thank you for coming out, Mr. Mattis. In your view, what makes a city like Eastpointe successful, and how would you ensure Eastpointe achieves or maintains that standard?
Success, I think, I think it has lots of potential definitions. I think it means something different to everyone. I think it's different for elected officials versus staff versus somebody who lives down the street. But I think that defining success is important to just kind of know where the benchmarks are. And so having those conversations about what does it look like is always a helpful thing. It's hard for me to say right now, like this, as soon as Eastpointe does this one thing, like you achieve RRC certification and now you're all done with development stuff. That's not realistic. So it's important to set those benchmarks and work towards them, but know where the next step is. So.
All right, thank you.
Councilwoman
I have two questions for you. How would you describe your management and leadership style? And please identify both strengths and weaknesses related to your management and leadership approach.
Sure, I'd say my style is definitely more carrot than stick. I try to find the good, find the positives, and I take more of a relational approach. I want to feel people out and understand what their goals are, what their successes are, what they're working towards, and get a sense of that so that we can cohesively move things forward for the greater good. If there can be wins individually or as a team along the way, I think that's great. I was a golf coach for a long time, so I approach things with that. I know if any of us are golfers, we know we can be kind of fragile sometimes. So I learned to correct courses, not golf courses, but course correct along the way gently. So if you're in the middle of the round, you're deep in this project, a word of encouragement is going to go a long way. Instead of trying to break down their swing in the middle of the 14th hole, it's not going to go very well. So do as much coaching ahead of time and try to build people up, the weeks before a tournament, instead of waiting until the day of to say, you're doing that all wrong. So have those tough conversations ahead of time so that we get on the same page, and then encourage along the way. And then after, there's a van right after, or where we're going to talk about, what went well, what didn't, what do we got to work on for the future. But try to work with people where they are, and try to work for the greater good so that everybody can pull in the same direction.
Thank you, Councilman Curley.
Thank you. What would you consider essential in the relationship between a city manager and the city council? And how will you facilitate a productive relationship with the city council?
Great question. I think the city manager is the conduit between the city council and the staff. I think we both have an ear to the ground on what is important to residents and business owners, but I think sometimes we're listening for different things, right? And so as the manager, to be the person who can communicate, here's what we're hearing, here's the timeline for those things to the city council, but to also take that feedback and say, we want to pull in this direction, or it's important to us that we work on this project, or let's make this thing a priority, and then communicate that to staff and to residents that our focus is here right now, or things like that. There's a lot of things we get to work on a regular basis where we're juggling several projects or efforts at once. So I think having a keen understanding of what's most important at any given time is paramount as the manager. So to be able to communicate those needs and efforts, both to council and to any other stakeholder who may walk in the door.
Thank you.
All right.
Councilman Baker.
How do you ensure that the needs and concerns of the community are incorporated into the city decision-making process?
Good question. I think it's very important to get that feedback. And like I said, sometimes it's positive, sometimes it's not. But I think to engage people, however it's going to work for them, is important as the city. So to be available, to have those conversations, maybe it's over coffee while I'm, stopping to grab coffee on my way into the office, or maybe it's while I take a walk down Gratiot in the middle of the afternoon and I'm talking to business owners. But to just have those conversations and be available is really big. It can be in a structured way where we have an engagement, like Ian did a fantastic job on like the posters out here related to the master plan and things like that. So to just get that engagement, maybe passively it's at the library and there's, people can take a survey, or maybe it's more informal where just there's time on my calendar where the door's open and whoever wants to come in and have coffee with me can. So I'm kind of a meet you where you are kind of person, and whatever that looks like, I'm happy to do my best to engage you in whatever way works.
Okay. Has there ever been a situation where that you had to handle when the community was faced with a contentious issue with strong diverging opinions, and what did you learn from that experience?
I mentioned sewers once already. Can we go back there? It's one that Ortonville's served entirely by on-site well and septic. So in a densely populated community with small lots, there's a well and a septic on every parcel. There are people who would regularly say that sewers are a terrible idea and it's going to kill this community because we're going to look just like everywhere else. We'll lose our character. And there were those who said, I have to have sewer tomorrow if I can because my field is failing and it's going to be very expensive to fix. So I got to hear the full spectrum of what could be from stakeholders. I worked closely with a variety of agencies and people dealing with the county, dealing with residents, dealing with surveyors, and right on down to everybody who had some kind of input on what we could do to make this feasible, make a process that works for everybody. So that meant trying to craft language that said, if you've replaced your septic tank in the last 5 years, you don't have to hook up to sewer right away, even though that extends the cost onto other people right away. So there was just lots of tough conversations about what that could look like, or where do we set that benchmark, or things like that. So got to hear a lot of feedback in a variety of ways and from people, but I think it was a positive. It was a net positive to just talk through it and let them know that we're here and we're listening. It may not break your way that at the end of the conversation, but we're going to do everything we can to hear you out and do what we can.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. So my question might seem a little redundant at this point. You've touched on it a little bit already. A question about morale. The city is focused on building a positive employee culture among staff at all levels. What is your experience with intentional building and maintaining positive cultures for an organization?
Yeah, great question. It is huge. I've been a part of organizations that make this an intentional focus, that team building is a constant a want. It's something we're going to work on all the time. And then I've been a part of places where it's almost discouraged, where it's so bottom of the list that it gets forgotten a lot of times. And it's easy to feel isolated or left out of processes and things like that through that. I think it's important to stay intentionally engaged in team building. From a coaching background, I think that's huge to have ways that we can engage people that may be lighthearted, may be fun. There will be lots of sitting around the table and having tough conversations in this role and in this world, but to be able to have conversations and build that relationship along the way in a variety of ways. So it might be, I bringing in donuts one day. It might be, everybody doing lunch and learns where we can learn from other people, other departments, what they do and how they do it. I think team building is something to always keep in mind to build a positive relationship among everybody.
Thank you. Councilman DeMonico.
Thank you. How have you successfully addressed financial challenges in your previous roles? And can you provide an example of how you transparently communicated budget decisions to stakeholders?
Yeah, budget decisions are like the easiest thing to figure out, right? And to communicate. I kid. But it's one that I've served in municipalities that come from a place of we don't have enough money, we can't do anything, let's just stay status quo. And to try to change that mentality to we do have resources, we do have levers we can pull to increase what we can do with what we have. And so I went through an extensive period where municipality I served had not borrowed money in several decades, if ever. And so to coach and encourage and work with my finance team as well as our elected officials to say, borrowing money isn't the scariest thing in the world. It's possible. Here's how we can do that without giving away the farm. And we can use that money now to improve, be it roads, be it infrastructure, whatever it might be. But we can use that now without giving away our future, and to get into a perpetual cycle of communicating that. It was huge, just to let them know that this is what it looks like, this is why it's not bad. It sounds like a boogeyman, but we can look under the bed and make sure there's no boogeyman here. So it was a lot of communication to communicate that. Budget decisions are very tough, but I found that the sooner you can communicate those things or let our elected officials know, working with our staff to figure out what issues may arise is huge. So get ahead of it as best we can. And then through a budget, I've learned too that budgets are wonderful, but they always change. So change is inevitable, that there will be an issue that arises that we had no idea was coming. There will be things that don't happen that we expected, just change will happen. So to be ready to embrace that change along the way.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilwoman Pashadlik.
In your past roles or projecting or to what you will do at Eastpointe, how have you or will you manage neighborhood investments and economic development? And if you could provide a specific example of what you have done or what you would plan to do as our city manager.
Great question, thank you. I think we communicate on we change on a neighborhood level. So I think that's huge, to engage things in a neighborhood way. We know just from planning and zoning and how we use different parts of our city that there are different characteristics across different neighborhoods. And so to be intentional about how we communicate with different neighborhoods, I think is really important to give as many resources as we can to neighborhoods, to get that input of, on this side of the road, we want to see this, and on that side, they can have that, but we want to see this. So have those conversations, know that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to things like economic development, that character is different. Even as you go from 8 Mile to 9 Mile to 10, they're all different. And so economic development can take lots of different forms and shapes, and a lot of communities define it differently. So it's been interesting to work in Flint, which has a long history with, as the vehicle city of, Flint was focused on one employer forever, and GM's gonna be here forever, and they're gonna be our major employer, and that is no longer the reality. So to work with that change has been really, really instrumental in how I view economic development. To see that there is no one big fish but there are lots of small fish in the sea. And so we've worked very closely with our kind of mom and pop shops and smaller places to develop and give them resources and help them in lots of exciting ways that the one size fits all, GM isn't really coming back probably in the way that it was, and employing 30,000 people, that's not realistic. But there's lots of other opportunities to grow and develop and create economic opportunity for everybody.
Thank you. Councilman Curley?
Thank you. Can you describe your experience with modernizing public spaces and addressing aging infrastructures? What challenges did you encounter and how did you overcome them?
Public spaces are huge to me. I think they are so important. We live here, we work here or somewhere nearby, and what do we do with that other third of our time? So creating that third space is huge. I think that's what actually makes community. So to have those public spaces where people can get together, can talk, you can actually meet your neighbor and engage with them. You can get to know people. I think community spaces are vital to any community. And so creating those places, it may be a city-led effort to create those places that we, have a park that we can activate, or it may be getting out of the way and letting that happen organically from a couple business owners that want to get together and, use their alley to get people together or things like that. There's lots of ways that I've seen be successful to cultivate that third space and a place that people can gather. And then the infrastructure to support it, it looks different everywhere, but I think infrastructure alone can be, to be intentional about creating those spaces while working with infrastructure is very important. So when I started in Ortonville, there had never been a capital improvement plan. There had never been a plan for how we're gonna fix our roads or how we're gonna deal with some of these long-term issues. So I was able to work very closely with our DPW director and our finance team and some other consultants to put that plan together for the first time, to consider those, and knowing that creating spaces for people to gather was part of the equation, was very helpful to talk about that. There was a small pocket park right in downtown in Ortonville that had always just been an empty space. It's where the Christmas tree had been, but there's nothing there now except for some brick pavers. And so we worked very closely through a couple of grants and a couple partners through Oakland County and the DDA and Main Street and people like that to activate that space. So to get a small grant for some lights so that there's somewhere that's actually lit up in downtown that you can get together in the evenings was a huge difference maker. And to plant some trees intentionally. And there's plans underway to build a small stage so that you can have outdoor concerts or movie nights or things like that in an intentional way that you can actually get people together. So to build the infrastructure to support that and then encourage it and develop it, it's a challenge, but it's definitely a worthwhile endeavor.
Thank you.
Councilman Baker?
Thank you. How do you balance the need for long-term strategic planning with the day-to-day operational needs of the city?
Great question. It can be, sometimes those things feel very urgent, and it feels like it's the thing that's top of mind, and I just heard about it, and I really want to work on that thing right now. Knowing that it's something that you don't need to put all the effort into it right now. You just need to kick it off and let it go, and it's going to gain momentum down the line. So know when to hold them and when to fold them, I think is very helpful. That there's some things that you do need to do right now. You have your day all scheduled out and you're back-to-back meetings, but Darren, the DPW director, comes in and says, we have this issue and I need help right now. The day does explode sometimes. Sometimes those are the do things that you have to do immediately. And then there's some long-term things that you can delay a little bit. You can do, you can just get it started. Like I said, you can kick it off and then hand it over or delegate it to other people to run with. So you can delay on that. And then there's some things that it's a priority. It's something that's important. I can drop it for right now. I'm going to put it on the back burner. I'm going to set that one aside. I'm going to make that note and make sure I document it. Here's what you're looking for. Here's the things we need to capture. We're going to work on that later. So to know when to hold them and when to walk away and when to run too. So all helpful things.
All right, thank you. I have a question kind of about management style. Obviously, the city manager is the chief administrator in the city, and we're the legislative body. Do you have a policy or a philosophy about employees communicating with us?
I don't have a hard and fast rule. I know this looks different pretty much everywhere. I try to find opportunities for both groups to get together when possible, but I try to steer as best I can to knowing what we want to talk about ahead of time, making sure everybody's ready for those conversations. I try to not leave staff out to dry of just like, hey, I'm going to transfer to the mayor to answer this question out of the blue. And so I know that the manager serves as the conduit between the two. So connecting as appropriate elected officials and administrative folks to best address issues. And that can take on a lot of different flavors. It could be a regular lunch and learn, or there's office hours for different departments at different times where we would encourage city council to come in and have those conversations. It can be that I reach out to staff when I do get those questions. I'm not going to put them right on the spot and expect them to be, to have everything, all their notes prepared at the drop of a hat. But we'll have those conversations on a regular cadence to understand, if they're missing a piece of information, I can help track that down, or whatever I can do to connect those dots. I try to.
Okay, thank you. Any follow-up questions from council? No. Okay. I think that's all we have then for now.
Yep.
Mr. Vitrano?
Sure. Ryan?
Great.
Thank you for your time this morning. Also, we would like to give you the last minute, kind of share anything you would like with City Council as we close out the interview.
Awesome, thank you. Thanks again, James. And I appreciate the opportunity, so thank you so much for having me. It has been great to come and learn more about Eastpointe, learn more about what's happening, and I got to tell you that I am very encouraged. I like what I see. I think it's a community on the rise. I think there's still work to be done, but there is so much potential. I think the bones are good. The skeleton has lots of things that are going to be added to it soon. If the roadblocks still exist, they have been nudged at least, so we know that they move, right? So to see change and positive change and things that we want to see in the very near future, that is very encouraging in Eastpointe. So I appreciate the opportunity to be considered for this role. I hope you'll follow up with James with any questions or anything else that we can speak to. But again, I just appreciate the opportunity to be considered. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, we'll take about a 5-minute break as I escort this candidate out and prepare for the next. Thank you.
Thank you. Resuming the meeting at 12:45, Mr. Vitrano.
Thank you very much. Jason, thank you for being here this afternoon. Really appreciate the investment you made in this position already. With your pre-screening with me, your meeting with the department heads yesterday, your meeting with the public this morning, and now this public meeting with City Council. We've prepared you for your first question, which is to present to City Council kind of a however you wish, and you chose a PowerPoint presentation, an introduction of yourself and your professional background, your interest in the position, and an opportunity that you're excited about here in Eastpointe. So with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Thank you, council members, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for having me this afternoon. I really appreciate that. I really appreciate not having a tall lectern as well. It's always my favorite. To start a little bit about me, for me, family is everything. We're very community focused. I recently got married in May to my lovely wife, Kayla. On the left are my two kids, Tegan and Alex, and up front are her two kids, Mason and Quinn. So our blended family is, we're kind of everywhere. My oldest is at Oakland University, my youngest is in Jackson, and then Mason and Quinn split their time with us. And then the photo on the right there is me at one of our favorite parks that we like to go to. They have some tiny houses, and they're all painted up to look like different buildings, library, a restaurant, stuff. And one was City Hall, and there was a sign that said mayor on it, and as a former mayor, I couldn't help but take a photo next to it. So we really enjoy our time. Some of my interests, anything with an engine. We do like to travel and go to different events and things. This is the family at Appalumpkin and Tecumseh with my future son-in-law. Tegan's fiance, Ty, is the tall gentleman next to me. We have, I like to play video games, of course. If anybody is a similar age to me, that is SimCity, which kind of started my interest in local government. For my birthday last year, my wife got me a helicopter ride tour across downtown, and we got to check out the Gordie Howe from up above. We also enjoy concerts and music and different kind of unique experiences. This is one of the candlelight concerts that they did downtown last year with the Kalkaska String Quartet. We love food. Last time we were in Florida on our way to the Bahamas, we stopped at this very interesting restaurant and got to experience some interesting food. Some of our personal travels, we love to travel. As I mentioned, I've been on the field at Comerica Park as a coach for my stepson's t-ball team. The large group photo there is us down on a cruise to the Bahamas. And on the beach there is my wife and I. Those are sort of our engagement photos, I guess. And then the cave, we were in Kentucky and decided to do a cave tour. We've been to Mackinac together, and of course the helicopter ride was a ton of fun. I have had a very unique career path. I think one of my photos is missing there, so I'll come back. I'll touch on that. So the terrible photo on the left was my candidate photo back before I had too much gray hair. I also worked in radio for a while. I did play-by-play. I did afternoons on the country station. A lot of high school sports, so I've been very involved in the community my whole life. There should be a photo of my nameplate, but I don't know where that ran off to. But yeah, I didn't really know what I wanted to be when I grew up, so when I ran for elected office, my city manager sat me down and said, "This is your lane, this is my lane. As long as we stay in our respective lanes, everything will be okay." And I discovered very quickly that I did not particularly care much for politics, but I loved government and I loved the day-to-day administration. So he sort of mentored me throughout my tenure as mayor, and then I went back to school after my tenure and got my degrees in public administration while I was still working in media. And that was when I finally attended my dream school. Ever since I was in like 7th grade, for some reason, I was obsessed with attending the University of Arizona. I was blessed that they finally had a global campus, which made my life a lot easier to attend and obtain my degrees through that route. And then my professional journey, I was the mayor, obviously, of the city of Jackson from 2013 to 2015, went back to school from 2015 to 2019, and then served as the DDA director for the city of Eaton Rapids, which their logo is not there for some reason, until 2021, when I finished my master's program, and then I became the city manager of the city of Litchfield until 2023, and then I was in Belleville until July of 2025, and that is the handout that I gave to you, kind of my career path since then. Unfortunately, for probably the last year in Belleville, there was some issues going on, and I was looking to move on. And finally, we got to the point where I transitioned from the city manager to a consultant role in July of this year, and then I had a 3-month contract to help with the transition of the interim manager to, or my assistant city manager to interim manager. And then I moved on from there and kind of just enjoyed my summer and spent some time with the family, kind of recharged my batteries, reset myself, and stayed involved in the community. I have a substitute certificate, and I also passed the MTTC to teach secondary social studies. So I've just kind of been involved in the community as best I can, serving as a building sub for the middle school. I've taught pretty much every class I can think of. I've taught choir, esports, basketball, you know, the traditional subjects, social studies, math, English, science, and then I've spent a lot of time in the cognitively impaired and autism spectrum disorder classrooms. Some of the notable accomplishments that I've had during my tenure, both as an elected and an appointed official, we did a major downtown renovation in Jackson. Once we completed that, we literally went from one side of the street to the other, door to door. Brand new sidewalks, new infrastructure underground. We adapted for the addition of approximately 2,000 new housing units when we made those renovations, and it spurred on about $150 million in new investment from 2014 and beyond, including 2 new multi-story housing units with some mixed-use development mixed in there, and a ton of new restaurants. If you looked at Jackson in probably 2008, 2009, after 5 p.m., it was a ghost town. After we spurred this investment on, there's probably more people downtown after 5 p.m. than there are working before 5 p.m. with all the nightlife that we have going on, which is a phenomenal thing to see. We made it much more walkable, well lit, it's very safe, it's a lot of fun to get down there. We also overhauled our neighborhood and economic operations department, which is, for lack of a better term, our building department and code enforcement. We had a major issue with absentee landlords and a lot of commercial property owners that just were sitting on their buildings. When we decided to crack down on that and give our NEO department some teeth, we cranked up our inspection programming, we did a bunch of demolitions, and then we really kind of held everybody's feet to the fire and made sure that the buildings were either being renovated, being leased, or were occupied and generating revenue for everybody involved. In Eaton Rapids, unfortunately, most of my tenure was interrupted by COVID, which made economic development very, very difficult, but we transitioned to being more of a support system rather than a development driver during that time period. We were a Main Street community, so we helped to develop a COVID playbook for businesses. If you had to lay people off, this is how you do it so you can bring them back easily and efficiently. We helped with a lot of our businesses modernizing their software, their point of sale systems, their online inventory, their online presence, helping them convert from being an in-person only store to having carry out, curbside, shipping, whatever they needed to do. And we were blessed to not lose a single business during the shutdown, which was phenomenal for us. And then when I went to Litchfield, there was a lot of projects that were kind of white whale projects, one of which was an abandoned school that we didn't really get a chance to tackle during my time there, but we did address the abandoned pool that had been demolished. We received a grant from CDBG to redevelop that space into a splash pad, amphitheater, new playground structure, and demolish the old bathhouse and rebuild it as a bathroom and concession space for nonprofits. And then in Belleville, again, it was more of the same, doing a lot more with less in terms of funding. We were able to tackle a project that had been on the radar for 25 years and securing a new city hall. My first day in Belleville, when I sat down in the chair, I had an OSHA violation on my desk. So our building was in rough shape, and we were able to find a new building, secure that, and renovations are currently underway. So this is we kind of put our money where our mouth was for the last 25 years and got that project underway. We also fully staffed the police department. We fully staffed all of our departments for that matter. We redid all the union contracts, so they were a little bit more balanced one way or the other. And I was proud that we were able to hire the first female police chief in the city's history. We really tried to embrace our staff internally and move them up through the ranks and create a culture that set up everybody for success, and we had succession planning all squared away once we got all those pieces in place. So on my end, Eastpointe has a lot of potential, as most of you that had a chance to talk to me this morning found out, was one of my big selling points for me. It seems there's a collaborative spirit. When you walk in the hallways here, you can see a lot of people are participating in some of the planning that's been going on, the master plan process. A lot of my background aligns with some of the priorities that were in the previous master plan and some of the goals that have been set through economic development and creating a zoning plan that aligns with what Eastpointe's looking to do moving forward, mixed-use developments and things like that. And really the values. It's a community-oriented city, and there's a deep commitment to making sure that everybody's involved, and there's a lot to do for people of all ages, which is something my family and I absolutely love. So there's two projects that sort of stood out to me. One was the DDA and the downtown project. I took some photos the other day. In the Gratiot 9 Mile area is ripe for potential there with the Rite Aid that needs to be redeveloped. There's an empty lot there that can be redeveloped that I kind of got a picture of. That's ripe for a mixed-use development. Having a lot of control over some of those parcels and properties is a positive thing. It's something that I've embraced as a DDA director and as a city manager, is purchasing properties and holding on to them until the right opportunity comes along. The dollar stores and things like that are great, but when there's one on every corner, you kind of oversaturate the market, and it creates problems, and they start to decline very rapidly. So sitting on those properties until the right opportunity comes along is something that I tend to embrace. But also there's a great mix there downtown between some of the franchise type stores, your storage unit facilities, and then you've got some of the cell phone franchises and things like that. But then you also have a lot of locally owned stores, a lot of clothing and stuff like that, which I thought was really great. You want that blended mix of both the franchise, the box stores, if you will, and the smaller locally owned stuff. On the flip side of that, the neighborhoods, as I mentioned, NEO is something that's very near and dear to my heart. A lot of the community is set up, there's not a lot of overwhelming blight where you would need to take down a lot of houses. It's a lot of just cleaning up the details, right? The code enforcement in terms of grass and weeds, and I didn't see a ton of inoperable vehicles, but that's always usually a problem that springs up every now and again. Debris and trash buildup, brush buildup and stuff like that when people are cleaning their yards. So working with the building department to create an environment for code enforcement that has some teeth, that we can kind of really get down into the details and the nitty-gritty of what makes a city great, and then you start to fully subscribe to that broken window theory where it suddenly becomes a race to not be the house on the block that everybody talks about. And so then that problem starts to develop itself, if that makes sense. So I think I'm running up on my 8-minute time, I believe. Thank you, James. So I just want to thank you all again for the opportunity, and look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much for that introduction. We'll move right into the questions. Councilman DeMonico.
All right, thank you. Thanks for the presentation, Mr. Smith. In your view, what makes a city like Eastpointe successful, and how would you ensure Eastpointe achieves or maintains that standard? Obviously, you just talked about it a little bit.
Yeah, so again, it comes down to creating an environment on the economic development side that is easy to understand for developers. When they come in, you hear a lot of talk in our circles about, on the planning side, it's very cumbersome. It's very hard to understand, especially for somebody who is local, who may not necessarily be used to the developer side of things with a site plan and making sure that they understand the rules in terms of parking and landscaping and what trees can I plant, what shrubs can I plant, or can I just do kind of whatever I want. So making that process seamless and helping them to understand these are the types of things that we are looking for in a site plan. So when you bring it to the table, we don't have to do 15 different revisions back and forth. Like, this is great, but you need to move these trees here and there. So having that outlined, ready to go for even a layman to understand. If I wanted to open up a business, I don't know, selling baseball cards, I know what my building has to look like, or I know what I need to do to develop that. It's nice to know the sirens work.
Yep.
It's always good. We had a problem in
We just
Litchfield,
replaced a couple.
Or not in Litchfield, but in Belleville, we had to replace our sign.
Yeah.
We had an old Cold War era sign that you physically had to come in and push a button and hold it. So if they were out on a call, one of our officers had to either decide to come and hit the button or, leave the call or stay on the call, and then the button just has to wait. So I was glad we were able to redo that to link up with our dispatch center. But anyway, to get back on track, it's that education component, but then also you have the teeth for code enforcement, which they understand you've got both the carrot and the stick. We're here to help, we're here to support you in whatever way we can, but also we're gonna hold you to a standard, and that standard is, we expect that to be met both on the commercial side and the residential side. But we also have, again, that educational component that comes with that, whether it's a code enforcement for a resident that has an inoperable vehicle, you knock on the door and say, hey, you gotta get that running, you gotta get it plated, you gotta get it insured, ready to go. If you don't wanna do that, here's a list of charities that'll happily take your car for free, or if you wanna tow it to a storage facility or a mechanic, here's a list of tow companies that can do that. I'll be back in a week. If it's still here, then we talk about, the penalties and what we're gonna do from there, whether it's us coming back out and we tow it away at your expense or however that works. But, it comes back to being ripe with opportunity, but you've gotta put yourselves in the right position to have that environment that creates a both welcoming for developers, but also is supportive of anybody local that wants to develop too.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Fitzshadlick.
I have a two-part question. How would you describe your management and leadership style? And please identify both strengths and weaknesses related to your management and leadership approach.
So I tend to be, hands-off is the wrong word, but I despise micromanagement. So I refer to more of a trust but verify type of management style. I give my staff the freedom to operate and the ability to be creative. I tend to not force them into a box. We're at point A, everybody knows where point B is. As long as you're getting there ethically, safely, legally, and financially responsible, how we get there is kind of up to the staff. I let them create. They went to school for whatever department they're in most of the time. They have the educational background, they have the experience. If anybody listens to 97.1, let them cook. Let them do their thing. And so I check in regularly with my staff. It's particularly the department heads. We meet weekly, and then I will touch base with them individually as the week goes on. But we meet once a week, understand what everybody's working on, what tools do they need to be supported, and try to give them all those tools as best I can within the framework of our budget, making sure that they're aligned with the council's goals, and making sure that we're all moving in the same direction in that perspective. So one of the strengths is, again, my door is always open to help them be supportive, whatever tools they need, but also I also hold them accountable to those goals and those activities without standing over their shoulder or standing in their way. I try not to be an inhibition to their goals. That it is a positive, but sometimes on the negative side of that, they can stray a little bit from what we're trying to do, and you kind of have to reel them back in a little bit, which is a tendency when you're more of a trust but verify type of leader. On the flip side of that, I try to communicate as much as humanly possible so that there's no surprises when council's out in public. When I'm out in public, I don't like to be surprised. I also don't like when council is surprised as well. So there's a lot of communication that comes back and forth, and I'm sort of the facilitator of that, whether it's delivering a message to council, this is happening, water main break or whatever, crew is on it, we expect it to be resolved within the next couple of hours, or it's gonna be a multi-day thing, or this ordinance, is on the agenda to be amended. Here's why it's a positive, through memos or whatever. And, this is why it's being amended. And then vice versa, consequently, the goals and the direction that council provides to me, I deliver back down to the department heads. This is what's changing, this is why it's changing, or this is the direction we're moving in, and here's how we're best gonna get there, or we talk about how the best route to get there. On the flip side of that, one of the biggest lessons I learned in Belleville, was when I have meetings with various department heads or contractors, and there's an elected official in the room. One of the things that kind of bit me a little bit was that I would rely on the council person to deliver that information to all the other council members. And that occasionally did not happen, and towards the end, it would come down to completely forgetting that they were even in the room to begin with, and not remembering conversations that happened. So one of the biggest lessons and one of the weaknesses that I had that I've been trying to create a solution to is how to effectively communicate back to the rest of council, regardless of whether the council person that's in the room with me communicates or not. So I looked at, towards the end, the AI dictation of virtual meetings, if we were virtual, taking a lot of notes, recording meetings, things like that, so that I had all the tools that I needed to deliver whatever was said in the room back to everybody else. And it seemed to work pretty well towards the end before I left. And yeah, so I'm working on that, but I still consider it something that's a work in progress, as a sort of a weakness.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Curley.
Yes, thank you. What do you consider essential in the relationship between a city manager and the city council? And how will you facilitate a productive relationship with the city council?
Absolutely. As I mentioned, it's communication. I would communicate to city council, regularly when there was an issue that popped up, but typically weekly I would touch base with everybody on council, say, this is what we worked on last week, this is what we're working on going forward, and then we would kind of fill in the blanks as the week went on. And that seemed to work well for most of the council. I typically met with every council person and said, how do you like to have your information? Do you want me to hand you a written report? Can I email you? Should I text you? Do you want to meet in person? How does that work? What does that look like? And I had council members I would meet for breakfast. Once a week, I had council members that wanted a handwritten, typed report that I would deliver to them. Some just said, just text me, I'm good. And then I would send out a full email to everybody, and that was good for everybody as well. And then they would expand on that if they had questions. Additionally, at the beginning of every year, regardless of whether we have new members in the seats or not, I did two things. Number one, I would bring in the MML, and Chris, their general counsel, would come in, do an update and a refresher on the OMA, on the council manager form of government, how that relationship works. Just as a refresher, it seemed to work pretty well. Towards the end of the year, things would kind of get a little sideways, and you kind of have to reel some council members back in and say, hey, you're tiptoeing the OMA line. You kind of need to bring that back in a little bit, or you've kind of been interfering in the day-to-day with this department. We kind of need to bring you back in a little bit, back into line. And that was one of the lessons I learned very early on as an elected official, is I would tend to move toward that administration lane rather than staying in my own lane as an effective elected official, and allowing the city manager to be that point of contact. The second thing that I would do is we would go over goal setting for the year. So we have our master plan, right, that it kind of gives us a broad overview of the next handful of years. What we would do is kind of dial in on that annually, and in January I would put up the giant Post-it notes along the back wall behind council on the dais with each department or specific component of the city on one of the sheets, and I would ask them for goals. I had one council person who their big thing was sidewalks. They wanted the sidewalks fixed. Cool, I can do that. Can you be more specific, because we have several miles of sidewalk that needs to be fixed? So can you be more specific this year? Which specific sidewalks do you want to work on? Which roads do you want fixed? Is there something within the police department that you want to see done? And then I would have each of the council members rank their top 3 picks. And then whichever one received the most votes, that's the one that went on the top of the list. And then we started moving down the list as far as goals went annually. We tried to make sure that they all properly aligned with the master plan. They were specific. They were, they were reasonable, and that seems to work. For the last 4 or 5 years, it's worked pretty well for me. And then everybody's on the same page from the get-go at the beginning of the year. We all know this is the direction we're moving in. If council wants to change direction, it's a reminder, these are the goals. Is this one that's way down here that's not been done yet? Do you want us to move that up? Is that something that has become a priority? Or can we keep moving on and down the list and hitting that low-hanging fruit, and then working our way, down towards that other goal. So, and then just kind of communicating off of that framework there as the year goes on. And again, the regular updates to council. I try to provide a regular update at every council meeting as well, so it's on the record. And yeah, just kind of overly communicating, except for the one point where I needed to work on. So that's something that I'm working on going forward, but yeah.
Great, thank you. Councilman Baker.
Thank you. Okay. How do you ensure that the needs and concerns of the community are incorporated into the city decision-making process?
Sure, and a lot of that comes down to the master plan process to start with. You get a lot of public input. I've been privileged to be part of 3 different master plan processes in my career, which it seems like every stop I've had, we're doing our master plan again. Okay, let's go. But it gives you a good opportunity to talk to the community and discuss those things, and what's important to them, what's important to council. And then the administrative staff can compile all that data, reconcile a lot of it, and continue to move forward as you develop the master plan. Beyond that, it's a little bit of a new world here when I did the tour, having a locked door and I guess some gatekeepers, if you will, between myself and the residents. Everywhere I've been, my door is usually the first one that they see when they walk in, and it's 9 times out of 10 it's open. So a lot of residents would pop in and talk and, just say hi or whatever. And then I had a few that would, had complaints and things like that, which I never have an issue meeting with residents. I'm happy to meet in my office. I'm happy to meet somewhere else. If they've got a complaint on their street, I will typically go to their street so that I can see it firsthand what we're talking about. And then continuing to educate through social media, through the council meetings as a whole, public hearings, and just kind of keep your finger on the pulse regularly through those different channels that you have available to you. But I'm never one of those administrators that's, my door is closed, make an appointment kind of thing. If you're here and I got nothing going on and you want to talk, come on in. If I have 5 minutes, I got 5 minutes. If I've got 20, then you've got me for 20 if you want it. So, I'm definitely one of those that prefers to be accessible, especially to the residents, so.
Okay, and then there's just a little follow-up. Can you describe a situation you've handled where the community faced a contentious issue with strong diverging opinions, and what did you learn from that?
Sure. We had a major issue in Belleville with roosters. And every community that's sort of a suburban community, and probably some urban communities as well, there seems to be always 1 or 2 residents that absolutely have to have some sort of barnyard animal. I don't know why, but we had a resident that had, I think, 4 or 5 roosters and a bunch of chickens, and it drove their neighbors insane between the smell and the noise. And they weren't exactly like bordering up against the township, so they didn't have a lot of property. They had a traditional postage stamp city lot. So it was very cramped in their backyard between all of the animals they had. They also had rabbits, they had dogs. It was a nightmare. So we decided we were gonna work on an animal ordinance. And I don't know if any of you have ever worked on an animal ordinance before, but it becomes the most important thing in the entire city for weeks on end. And it does not end. You will get phone calls, you will get emails, people will knock on your door. And then a lot of the what ifs. And it was very contentious. We had limited dogs and cats to a mixture of, I think, 5 total between the 2. We eliminated roosters completely, goats, some of the larger barnyard animals, because if we don't put it in there, somebody's gonna try and do it. So we were very, very specific in our original draft language, and then we got a lot of pushback from people who rescue animals, and they wanted to carve out for rescues, and then they wanted to carve out for birds, and they were getting down to like very specific animals to the point where we were like, I don't know why I have to say that you can't have a jaguar in your house, but you can't have a jaguar in your house. And so it was very, very contentious, but we brought in a lot of the stakeholders that had come to the meetings and complained about the ordinance, and we crafted it. We came to some reasonable conclusions, and we basically said, if you've got 6 dogs or 6 cats or whatever your combination is, as long as you don't have these specific animals, we're not kicking your door down to say oh, you got 7 dogs, gotta get rid of one, you know, whatever. And that was kind of our reasonable compromise is, you know, just don't get carried away. If the smell becomes too bad or the noise becomes too bad on a complaint basis, then we'll take action. But until that time, we'll more or less leave you alone as long as you don't have these specific animals. So that seemed to work out pretty well. Once we passed it with some of those compromises in place, it was a non-issue after that, so.
Great, thank you. My question is, the city is very focused on building a positive employee culture among staff at all levels. What is your experience with intentional building and maintaining positive culture for an organization?
Absolutely. When I started in Belleville, they were making their way out of a culture problem. Some of the talk around some of the professional groups and things like that was Belleville is not a place you want to work. They have financial issues, they have this, they have that, they have the other thing. It's just not a fun place to work. And when I got there, they were starting to slowly move their way out of that. At one point in time, staff could not spend more than $1 without council approval. City manager couldn't spend more than 50, which, as you all well know, is going to handcuff everything that you try to do, from ordering supplies to fixing a road. It's just a disaster waiting to happen. So one of the first steps that we took was to bump those numbers up, and during my tenure, we were able to bump them up to 1,500 for department heads, 2,500 for me, and then we had talked about bumping them up again to 25 and 5 without council approval, unless there was something that stuck out or it was a recurring thing. They weren't going to let me spend $3,000 a month. That I was going to have to come to council with, but yeah, so that created a culture issue. Once we got that changed, we started looking at some of our policies internally. We switched up the dress code, we adjusted our hours, and again, it came down to the administrator just getting off of their backs and kind of letting them do what they need to do. We're all grown-ups, we all know what job we have to do. But then I also would pick up tasks that, you know, if we were shorthanded up front, I didn't mind taking a utility billing payment. I did dog licenses. I helped out. And that really started to change the culture. The department heads started to take on some of that as well, where if we were short, they would help out. They would cover a desk for a lunch or whatever, until we were able to get fully staffed. And it kind of became this culture of support because they knew from the top down they had what they needed from me to be successful, and they knew that I was going to help them out and not ask them to do anything I wouldn't do myself. So that created a really incredible culture. We all got along very well. Department heads and I would meet regularly, sometimes on-site, sometimes off-site. You know, we would do our morning meetings on Tuesdays to kind of talk about what we were working on. Unless we had a council meeting the night before, then we would leave a few minutes early on Tuesday afternoon. We would go off-site. We would kind of unwind a little bit, kind of debrief from the council meeting, and figure out a plan of attack from there. And that really kind of created a culture where it was fun for them to come to work, and Belleville became a place of, you need to stay away to how quick can I get in there. And you know, we eliminated a lot of the bad blood that had kind of circulated through, you know, through either attrition or retirements, things like that. And yeah, we really took off from there.
Thank you. How have you successfully addressed financial challenges in your previous roles? Can you provide an example of how you transparently communicated budget decisions to stakeholders?
Sure. So working in smaller communities, you learn to do a lot with a little and do more with less. So, you know, it's a lot of the financial transparency comes from our audit being in a public hearing. I do the budget presentation in a public hearing. And being very transparent throughout the year when we are making expenditures and things like that, and helping council understand where we are, where we're going, and if we spend this money, where we'll be down the line. One of the biggest issues I had in Belleville towards the end was we kind of disagreed philosophically on finances. We had a fund balance of about 125%, and which is way more than you need. And so when we bought the building and we were going to do the renovations, we had set aside about $1.8 million to do both. And the finance director and I really strongly advised, you can pay cash for one, but don't pay cash for both, because that's going to bump us down to about 40%. We just redid the union contracts. You know, we're going to be investing a lot more in staff, and there's some equipment that we need. We highly recommend either bonding one or both, or bumping up the millage rate a little bit, because we were only at 8.2 mills, I think, so we had plenty of room to move up. And then just bump up the millage rate enough to cover the bond both, bump it up, and then you're good to go, and you don't have to worry about it. You still have a good-sized fund balance available to you. And then immediately, council went out and said, we bought a building, we're gonna renovate it, we're not raising taxes, we're not taking on debt. Great. Okay, well, now I gotta figure this one out. So, you know, we kind of behind the scenes tried to game plan and strategize how we were gonna figure that one out. And we were very transparent throughout the process, throughout the budget process, of saying, you know, this is, we strongly recommend bonding this. We strongly recommend raising the millage rate a little bit. You know, we don't have to go crazy and go from 8 to 16. We can go from 8 to 8.7 or 9 and cover our bond payment and be okay. And, you know, financially speaking, from the residents' perspective, it's not a huge undertaking. And we can kind of work within that framework a little bit. It didn't go over very well. You know, they wanted to keep their promise. And, you know, again, the finance director and I were just in major disagreement. We strongly advised against it multiple times, but they moved forward with that. And then additionally, we had an issue. We'd taken some millage rate away from our general operating millage and put it onto our public safety millage, where it should have been all along. And, you know, there's always that gap between the two, where at some point you're going to end up double dipping. It's just the nature of how taxes work in the state of Michigan. And we had to do a lot of PR to help people understand, yes, you're going to pay a little bit more this winter, but next summer your taxes are going down. And then it's a net zero operation. The problem is that at some point you're going to have to pay more, and then everything kind of balances itself out. Didn't really go over all that great. You know, the message that we delivered to the public was not really received all that well, and so we kind of had to reset ourselves and kind of rethink how we did the PR on that. But we were very transparent throughout the process. Once we kind of reshaped how we delivered that message to the residents, they understood it. And then when the summer taxes came out, they were like, oh, okay, we got this. So, yeah. So there's a couple different instances.
All right. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Pashadlik.
In your past roles or projecting to what you will do at Eastpointe, how have you or will you manage neighborhood investments and economic development? And can you provide a specific example of what you have done or would plan to do as our city manager?
Sure. On the neighborhood side, there's unfortunately, I mean, we are out of the era where there's just money flowing from the state to kind of help with that. In the past, in Eaton Rapids, I worked with our quality of life director, where we had help for some of our low-income residents. There was some grant programming through MISHDA that we were able to take advantage of, where they had blight violations or building code violations. And we said, by the way, there's this grant program. Let's get you signed up. We'll get you the money to fix this. Because that was what we were running into a lot, was a lot of our low-income residents, they needed new siding, they just couldn't afford it. They needed a new roof, couldn't afford it. But meanwhile, we're going to cite them, and that's going to be another cost on top of the fact that they have to fix their roof. Now they've got this fine. So we kind of dialed back on, you know, the violation portion of it and ramped up that revenue portion of it. And it was something that we did as a grant program through MISHA, and then also to backtrack a little bit, in Jackson, we had funds set aside in our NEO department where we would renovate a home that wasn't quite bad enough to be demolished, but wasn't good enough to be occupied and habitable. So we would invest the money because we planned to do it anyway. We owned the property. We would fix that property up, and then we would sell it to a resident that was trying to transition from being a renter to being a homeowner. And we had like an education program that we did through Community Action Agency, and then they would buy the house from us, and we essentially became the mortgage holder for 10 years. And if they paid on time for 10 years, we forgave the other 10 and called it a day. Because we were going to invest the money anyway, so it became sort of we would make half of our money back and then grant essentially the rest. And that program worked pretty well, and it allowed us to fill some gaps in some of our housing, and transition quite a few people from being a renter to being a homeowner. In Eastpointe, there's, I believe, 45% non-owner occupied versus home ownership. So if we can shift even more of that number from the 45 back over to the homeowner side, there's opportunity there if the finances allow for it to to have some of that grant programming available to help develop that. But also that comes with the the building department having teeth and being able to, handle code enforcement and be on top of those things and make sure the neighborhoods are cleaned up and the broken window theory and all of that. So I think you can have a strong educational program, a strong code enforcement program, but then also have some resources set aside to help with some of that as well. And those three together kind of usually make a good mix and get everybody where they need to be.
Thank you. Councilman Curley.
Yes. Can you describe your experience with modernizing public spaces and addressing aging infrastructure? What challenges did you encounter, and how did you overcome them?
Sure. So the best example I have is in Litchfield, when we had torn out the pool and we wanted to create a community space. And how did that look? Everybody wanted a pool back, but nobody really wanted to pay for it. And pools are kind of an albatross, if you will, to where you build it, you maintain it, you have to hire staff. In Litchfield, we didn't have a staff, that was capable of, it was mostly 15, 16-year-old kids with CPR certification and lifeguard certification. And you hope for the best and pray that they're not on their phone their entire shift. But pools never make money, and if they do, you've priced out the people that need them the most. So we kind of scrapped the idea of replacing the pool with a new pool and went with something a little more economical, like a splash pad, which brings in kids and families of all ages. We made it so that it was zero step. It was accessible for all children, so there was sensory toys and things like that. We did the same thing with the playground structure. But we also went a step further, added the amphitheater that didn't necessarily require power. The baffling up on top was basically 2 white pieces of wood that could drop down and become a movie screen, so you could do movies in the park. And we really tried to focus what was just a pool, and you bring in residents that don't necessarily have pools, or you bring in people from out of town, to really a true community gathering space. And then when we demolished the bathhouse and wanted to rebuild the bathrooms and do the concession space for nonprofits, that opens the door for your nonprofits to get involved, and they can sell concessions, which takes the burden off of the city as well and kind of puts it on them to make sure that they're buying the candy, they're buying the popcorn, they're buying all those things, and we don't have to staff it. We just unlock the door and turn them loose. So that kind of community gathering space I love. We had 4th Street Square in Belleville that, prior to my coming on board, had been recently renovated, that we leveraged as sort of the main hub of all of our events. We used it as the landing hub for our Lake Fest event, and then kind of spoked out from there. We used it for Winterfest for the same thing. It was a warming tent. It was where we did a lot of our major activities. And then it became the central hub for our car shows every Monday. We had the DJ there. The farmers market sort of started there and then spread out. So I love community gathering spaces, especially when they're leveraged on a regular basis. And I'm sorry, the second part of your question was?
What challenges, I think repeating too, what challenges did you encounter, how did you overcome them?
Sure, yeah, I believe there's some aging infrastructure as well. Again, that was the problem in Belleville, was the pool was aging and it needed to go. The state was actually the one that came in and shut it down. It wasn't the city's decision to do so, which creates challenges in its own right. But yeah, so some of the challenges, obviously, it's always money. Investing money into what is essentially an open space kind of sometimes can rub people the wrong way, especially when roads need to be fixed and you have water mains that need to be repaired and lead lines and all of that. So that's usually the biggest barrier to creating those gathering spaces, but there are tons of grant programming that's out there to help with offsetting some of that cost. We leveraged CDBG in Litchfield. In Belleville, we looked at the T-Mobile Hometown Grant. Ralph Wilson Foundation had a grant. Walmart has a grant. I mean, pretty much any box store is going to have a grant program for the communities that they're in or around. So you can kind of offset some of that cost, but that's usually your biggest impediment to creating those spaces is the negative public backlash when you're spending general fund dollars to create those spaces.
Thank you. Councilman Baker.
Thank you. How do you balance the need for long-term strategic planning with the day-to-day operational needs of the city?
Sure. That, again, that starts with the master plan. And you have your master plan, your capital improvement plan, and you balance all of those needs. I mean, we know when a police vehicle needs to be replaced, when it's at the end of its useful life. And you can put that into your capital improvement plan so that we know in 2 years we have to replace a squad car, so we can't drop, $70,000 on something else within the police department budget that maybe can wait 3 or 4 or 5 more years. We need to make sure we have that money set aside, or if we plan to lease, we make sure that we have the long-term funding available to cover the cost of that lease until we're ready to purchase it outright or return it, or however we want to do that. And then you looking at your master plan, and you look at some of the projects that are out there, you use sort of your long-term forecasting. We know generally how much we're going to receive in road funding, how much we're going to receive in CVTRS. In revenue sharing, we know how much we're generally going to receive in tax revenue. So you game plan a lot of that. Should we bond this out? Do we have the money to pay cash for it? Is there a grant programming out there for it? And I'm a grant hunter. I love applying for grants. Any opportunity that I can find to get a grant for something so that I don't have to pay for it is fantastic. We just did a project in Belleville that we wanted to look at our Main Street, and we had SEMCOG come in and do a road safety audit for us, which was a grant, so I think we paid 10% of that. And then we applied for Safe Streets for All, which is a $4.5 million grant, and we basically got the entire project. We can get the entire project covered if we get that grant. You use the tools that you have available to sort of address the needs of now, which is your grant funding, your current financial situation, but also you keep an eye on that long term. You definitely don't want to dip into your fund balance if you can avoid it. You certainly don't want to deficit spend, because then the state starts looking at you a little harder. But yeah, you want to be strategic in how you handle your union contracts and what that looks like for you long term, and then balancing the rest of your budget accordingly. You got to take care of your people. You're going to pay for what you get, and if you want quality, you got to pay for it, unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to look at that. But yeah, it's making sure that you have a really strong finance director that can help keep those things in line, and looking long term, and being able to forecast all of that out.
Thank you.
My question is a little bit about management style. Obviously, you've served before, so you kind of know both sides of it. Do you have a philosophy or policy regarding employees communicating with council members?
I do. So I tend to avoid both staff and elected officials interfering is the wrong word, but working on the day-to-day operations of things, communicating back and forth. I tend to be more of the facilitator of those things, where if a staff has an issue, they come to me first. It's very similar to a chain of command with police department, fire, and I'm essentially that first line of defense for you and the first line of defense for them, so that we don't run afoul of charter regulations and things like that. But yeah, I tend to come to me with it first. If you don't get a resolution from me, then by all means, go to my bosses. If it's just a general question, ask the question away. But if it has more to do with how the day-to-day operation of the city goes, that needs to be facilitated through me. And vice versa with elected officials communicating with staff. Asking questions, I totally don't have a problem with. Popping in to say hello, totally don't have a problem with. But if there's, hey, this person needs to go, or I walked in and this person was on their computer and they were looking at the free press or something, they need to be dealt with accordingly. Those types of things should come through me, and then I can deliver them back to staff, or vice versa. So yeah, it's typically following the chain of command for the most part. I'm pretty, not really lax, but I tend to not be overbearing on that, and run kind of a tight ship with that. But when it comes to interfering on day-to-day stuff, that's when I have to step in. So.
Okay, thank you. Are there any follow-up questions from council?
I have one very simple question. It was just something. You had mentioned about the splash pad where you converted that, the old pool. And you had mentioned about the restroom, but you said that, my understanding was that it's not staffed. It pretty much is kind of open.
Correct. So how we structured it, we were very strategic with it because at certain depths, you have to have a lifeguard. Ours was only, I think at any point in time, it was never more than 1/4 of an inch deep. So you don't have to have a lifeguard on duty. So it was more of a, play at your own risk, but it was also, it didn't recirculate. So we didn't have to have staff come out and turn it on and then staff come out and turn it off. There was a button that was pressed. So everything was kind of on a timer. And it operated, I think the way that we had structured the quote, the RFP, was we needed it to start at 8 a.m. and end, I think, at 9 p.m. But the system would be active at that point, but it wouldn't be turned on unless a child physically went in and pushed a button to start the water. And then it would run for 30 minutes and turn off. And then all of that water gets dumped into the wastewater system, and then they have to push a button again, and then it'll turn on for another 30 minutes, and off it goes. Because you pay for water, right, as a city, so we didn't want it to just be running 24/7 and then nobody's there, right? And it becomes a gigantic waste of money. So the way that we structured it was, if somebody's there and playing, great, they can hit the button. The kids love doing it. Anecdotally, if you've ever been to a couple different splash pads that have that system, it's a race to that button. All the kids want to be the one that pushes the button that turns the water back on. So it seemed like the best strategic option for us financially.
Okay, and in regards to your restrooms, were they locked up at a certain time of day?
Yep, so they were open from Memorial Day to Labor Day, and then they would open up at 8 o'clock, and then, we would open them up with shift change at 7 a.m., and then they would get locked at, I believe it was 10 p.m.
Okay,
was the policy that we had in place.
okay. All right, thank you.
Any other questions from council? All right, I'll turn it back over to Mr. Vitre now.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Jason, for your time this afternoon. We do want to leave you with the last opportunity to share anything in 1 minute with City Council before we end the interview.
Thank you. So I just wanted to take another opportunity to say thank you for the opportunity. The opportunity to meet with staff was phenomenal. It's a great team, and one that I can absolutely see myself working with. They were a lot of fun to chat with. The building is beautiful compared to the one I was in. That was literally falling apart on my head, but this is a beautiful building, and there's a lot of opportunity in the city that it's ripe for development, and it's right there. So the right leadership and the right guidance, and with the team that's in place, there's a lot of great things that can happen here. So I'm very much looking forward to that opportunity to serve this council and serve the residents of Eastpointe.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time, and
Thank you.
thanks for rushing back here. I know we bumped up your time a little bit.
It was a fun trip. We won the game, so.
For City Council, I'll walk the candidate out. That concludes our presentations for this afternoon. You're welcome to proceed to the next parts of your meeting as I walk the candidate out. And as a reminder, for the public watching this or rewatching this on video, City Council will consider the candidates during its regular meeting this Tuesday.
All right. Thank you. Well, we'll move into our hearing of the public. The hearing of the public is now open. Would anyone wish to be heard?
A couple of things I wanted to say. Really wish we had, I just turned it on. Oh, okay. I would have loved to have seen resumes prior to the interview, so we would have had an opportunity to have some idea of their background and whatnot. The only other thing I would encourage very strongly is to take time and make the right decision. And one of the things I've noticed that has always created problems in hiring practices with a number of organizations is using nepotism or cronyism as a factor in making that determination. So I hope that would not be the case. I don't know who you know. But I'm just throwing that out there because I think it's important to look at a person's background, what their fit would be, and who's going to have the best interests of the city in mind. So with that, thank you.
Anyone else?
Something when you get old. Hi, my name is Vicki Coleman, and I listen very carefully. I think that this lady, Ann, I guess because I like Royal Oak, I think she's, not that I have the right to make the, but just in my opinion, listening to her, and she sounds like she's on the ball. And I think this was very nice that you invited people from the community to give our opinion as to who we think would be a great fit. But yeah, I like her very much. And that young man who just left, I just think he's adorable. So if you're gonna hire on looks, he would get the job. He's adorable. So thank you, and I wanna take the time to thank the council and the mayor. The city looks wonderful. Thank you so much. I could retire from my unpaid job.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wish to be heard? All right, seeing none, the hearing of the public is closed. We'll move on to mayor and council reports. Councilman Baker.
Thank you. Well, I know that they left already, but I'm appreciative of those who applied. I'm glad that we had people who expressed interest in serving as our city manager. So I'm thankful for them. I'm thankful to Mr. Vitrano for making this a smooth process, as the candidates have stated, but from my end, I can't speak for everyone, but I felt like it was a smooth process, and I'm appreciative of that. And to those that actually came out to take an interest in who will serve the city as the city manager, thank you to you for coming out and being concerned about how we move forward. That's all.
Thank you. Councilman Curley?
Oh, thank you. Interesting meeting. It's, you know, you meet some fascinating people when you do this, and you interview people. It's going to be on the agenda tomorrow night, I guess. So the five of us have got to go home and pray about this and think about this and come up with somebody that gets, I guess, 3 votes, right, Mr. Mayor? I would think that would be the majority, but thank you guys for coming out. And it's almost 2 o'clock. I don't know if the Lions are playing or Tigers are playing, either one. I don't know. Anyway, I'm not going to do either. I'm going home and take a nap.
Hey, thank you. Councilwoman Pashadlik.
I'd just like to echo Councilmember Baker's sentiments. I agree. This process was very thorough, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Councilman DeMonico.
Yeah, same as everyone else. Yeah, thank you to all the candidates for coming out. Thanks to the residents that came out or are watching online or on TV right now. Thanks, James. Yeah, thought this process was very smooth, and I'm optimistic for Tuesday, not tomorrow night, Tuesday. Yeah, about our discussion, so.
Thank you. And I'm just going to echo what's already been said. Thank you to Mr. Vitrano. I think the process was really smooth. Thank you to the candidates for coming out and to the residents. And I appreciate that, especially joining us on a Saturday. With that, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I'll second that.
Please call the roll.
Councilmember Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember DeMonico?
Yes.
Mayor Kleinfeld?
Yes.
Councilmember Shadlick?
Yes.
Councilmember Curley?
Meeting adjourned at 1:44.